Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful night. So, again, I can't go on camera. My camera is on the fritz. Sorry about that. And also, the ladies are not going to be joining because CS is having fun with family, and Riot needs to study in order to do her finals for her college and whatnot. So, definitely wish Riot some good luck in the chat.
Yep.
And we still got
Absolutely.
some class and some, well, I was going to say something that rhymed with class, but couldn't think of anything except for ass. So we don't got any ass in the
No, but we do have some
panel.
sass
But,
because you do have me, so I balance everything out.
oh, yeah,
Jacob's
there's,
got the class, I've got the class and the sass.
I don't know. Wearing a
yeah,
shirt with a dragon on it. Is that class?
yeah, that's
No, but
classy.
you have a but you have a class, but you have a classy brain.
But
Oh, thank
anyway, so we are doing Iron Man 2 to Infinity Saga Sundays.
Woo!
And chances are, because I was on another friend's channel last week, if we do have any bots in the chat, I will be blocking them quickly after I send this little message.
Shut your fucking mouth! Shut the fuck up, you cunt! Shut it!
Yep, I absolutely love my clips that I have. But anyway, let's
I need to
say
make you a better
hello.
background though.
Well, the background is a reminder to all those that I do have a secondary Twitter, which is the Valkorian Twitter. Although I will be creating the Infinity Saga background for once we get to Avengers. Anyway, let's say hello to the chat. We got Neozoic and
Hello, chat.
Elena Na. How are you? Good to see you all. Lynn's a friend of mine. Neozoic is always welcome on my channel, always interactive with the movies and whatnot. So Iron Man 2, you guys got this watched and ready?
Well, of
Good to go.
course.
Alrighty.
What are you talking about?
I watched it 3 times in the last 24 hours. So yeah, I also watched
I watched it once.
the rest of the Infinity.
I
watched it also-
once. I'm good.
Yeah, I also watched it, or the rest of the Phase 1 Marvel movies as well.
Well, aren't you just special?
Yeah, short post. Anyway, but so the beginning of this movie, and we'll do plugs for the channels at the end of the stream, folks. So don't worry about that. We'll definitely get you guys to plug your stuff at the end. So the beginning is Ivan Vanko and his son, or his father, Anton. Anton is dying. This is the rehash of the first movie where you hear Tony admit that he's Iron Man, and Anton dies. Mickey Rourke as Ivan Vanko is absolute freaking brilliant casting. And fun fact,
He
folks,
is.
fun fact, Mickey Rourke was doing 2 movies at this time, or at the exact
Wow.
same time as this movie. He was doing
Mhm.
The Expendables with Sylvester Stallone,
Mhm.
Another good
which
film.
is why the hair is the same. So Ivan, or Anton, is dying, and he says, "All I can, or that should have been you, and I'm sorry that, but all I can give you is my knowledge." And we see that Anton Vanko and Howard Stark from the blueprint of the arc reactor knew each other and whatnot. So Ivan builds himself a freaking miniaturized arc reactor himself, and he's also giving his bird vodka. So,
Good Russian vodka.
yep, Russian vodka. But so what did you guys think of this beginning for this movie, where we see that there's a hidden truth to the Stark family's success?
I actually was pretty satisfied with it. That for me, the Stark family, even though Howard Stark, he always was kind of presented as, kind of a shrewd industrialist. He was never presented, as far as I can remember it in the original continuity, as like a corrupt businessman. Definitely very shrewd. Definitely had his hands and under the table at times, but but that is an effect, right, of what happens in this universe. Is we see someone like Anton getting his hands on this, and at first, I have to admit, as a huge Iron Man fan, I was a little disappointed that they combined Red Cyclone with Whiplash. Of course, Ivan is the name of Red Cyclone, and Whiplash is, I can't remember off the top of my head who's the true identity of Whiplash, but they combined them, and then later the comic books actually combined them in a comic book miniseries. But I think I said when we talked about the first Iron Man, there was like 7 Red Cyclones, so they didn't really lose anything. They just went with the one that had the most name recognition. But I thought it was a brilliant opening scene. I thought it did a good job of reminding people what happened in the previous entry, but without getting too deep into it, and really gave us a glimpse into some of the darker side of this MCU world of advanced technology.
Yep. Ambassador, what do you think of this?
Personally, Mickey Rourke was absolute metal in this movie. His portrayal as Ivan Vanko, because Anton was his father. Mickey.
Thank you. That's
Rourke,
what I couldn't remember.
Yeah, Anton was his father. It was Anton's name's on the blueprints next to Howard Stark's. Mickey Rourke is Ivan Vanko. There is a multi-layered performance going on with this character, because he could play this just as the vengeful, upset son who's trying to right the wrongs of his father into his family. He doesn't go that route. And with this opening scene, we very much see that he takes the knowledge that his father passed down to him, and he takes his own know-how. Because here's the funny thing: despite appearances, Ivan Vanko is I believe, a physicist. I can't remember what type of physicist, but a physicist of some sort. So he's definitely got the know-how. And honestly, that opening scene just reminding us, the main thing. I am Iron Man. Okay, that was the main takeaway from the first movie, so to speak. And I have been building his arc reactor. I have been building the whips, the electric whips.
Well, the whips come a little later.
Yeah, just a smidge later, but still, the main thing was the arc reactor.
Yeah.
It was a very satisfying opening.
Mm-hmm.
Just the tip of the iceberg. Unfortunately, it's not an iceberg that we got to fully explore. But obviously, Rourke had other obligations due to him being I think it was the second Expendables that he was in.
Nope, first.
He was in the first.
Was it the first?
And
Okay.
he actually, his main obligation was to Iron Man 2, so that's why he had such a limited role in the Expendables.
Okay.
He was only in the 3 scenes where he was touching up the tattoo, then the soul speech, and then the ending.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like the Expendables handler, right? He would give them the missions and tip them off and whatnot.
He was actually one of them. He was a merc with them, but he no longer had the heart to do it because he wanted to have something worth living for in it, or instead of just killing and whatnot. But yes, he also was the handler, if I remember correctly. We'll have to do a movie on or we'll have to do streams for those ones too sometime down the road.
That'd be it for that.
All right.
Yeah, count me in.
Yeah. Fun fact too: prior to her casting as Black Widow, she would cast as either Blonde Phantom for the Wasp before signed on to play Black Widow. That would be
Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, ScarJo. So then we get to the second scene to the scene after the title run, and it is Tony Stark, which there's a deleted alternate opening for this. Tony Stark is jumping out of a plane with his Iron Man Mark 4 armor. So he's jumping out of the plane, going down into the Stark Expo. Now, there is a alternate take where Pepper Potts is actually on the plane and basically shoves him out of the plane.
Yeah, he's having like a panic attack or something, right?
No, he was he was just
faking one.
I think he says you complete me.
Yeah.
Right, and she throws out the helmet.
You complete me, and then starts his descent. Now he actually gets hit by a freaking firework in this, which was pretty funny. It's hard to picture anyone else but Scarlett Johansson playing Natasha, but Emily Blunt definitely wouldn't be mad at that. I think that if Emily Blunt was to enter the MCU back during the Infinity Saga, I think that she would have done a great Elena Belovich, which is Dark Widow, which instead of the one that they had in Black Widow movie. I think that she could have actually played a good Dark Widow.
I could actually also see her in a more villainous. I could see her as Madame Mask as well, Emily Blunt.
Yeah, that's also a good one.
Because Madame Mask was slated to be in an Iron Man film, but it just never got fleshed out.
Also, she could have played Madame Hydra instead of the facsimile that they had in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But a lot of people forget Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually did coincide with the MCU Infinity Saga.
Yeah, what they retroactively said it was a different dimension.
Except that
it was originally canon, and then the final or the season after Thanos split, they said it was a different world because of what happened with Thanos. It ended differently in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe, and then they just flat out said, "Oh, never mind, it's not canon at all."
That's why I never watched the last season the one that before they time travel and after Coulson dies, it's completely dies. It's like I don't care.
I stopped watching when Coulson came back as an android. I was like, nope, I'm out. Life model.
Yep.
I know. Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. tangent.
No,
that's just what I dropped off. I was like, nope, LMD, Coulson, I'm out.
Yeah.
I
So
never
then we
watched
get
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so it doesn't matter to me.
well, they actually brought in the Ghost Rider into that. Two different Ghost Riders.
About that. Yeah, I heard about that.
The car
Robbie Reyes
one
was actually, or the actor who played Robbie Reyes was actually a pretty good Ghost Rider. For that, I should say a good
Gabriel
Robbie
Luna.
Reyes Ghost Rider, to be specific.
Well, they also did show Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider in there, the one that actually gave him the power.
Right.
But anyway, so Stark getting back on track. Stark lands in the expo, having a bunch of girls dressed up in their dolled Iron Man glows and whatnot, shaking their boobs. I'll keep it PG-13. Shaking their butts, shaking their boobs, doing the jiggles, and Shoot to Thrill is playing. So yeah, we then get to him doing his opening to the Stark Expo. And he's like, I'm not saying that the world isn't enjoying its longest time of peace because of me. And from the ashes of captivity has there not been a greater Phoenix personification ever. I mean, it's a great scene, but then after he does his father's opening video, we also see him measuring his blood, which, here's a shocker. He's dying, folks. He's testing his blood, which has palladium toxicity. Palladium level is 19% at this point in his blood, or in his blood. So it's like, oh crap, that's not good. And then we get his walkthrough with the Stan Lee cameo as Larry King. And he gets served a subpoena by this rather hot-looking marshal. I mean, not going to lie, she was hot, and she was also digging Tony. So, what'd you all
And
think of
I-
that? We'll go
Great
with
sequence.
Ambassador.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ambassador.
No, go ahead, Jake. It's fine. Really.
I was just going to say, fun fact about her, that character, she was played by, oh, now I'm going to forget her name, but the actress from House of Cards. Apparently, this is some insider info that I heard from a friend of mine who briefly worked at Disney. Apparently, he heard through the grapevine, she was originally supposed to be Captain Marvel. You were going to find out that her name was Carol Danvers at the end of Iron Man 2. But
Wow.
yeah, but they scrapped that during editing process. They decided they wanted to wait until the Avengers to introduce Captain Marvel, and the introduction kept getting delayed. But yeah, you were going to she was going to make an appearance at the end, kind of a callback scene, and then her name tag was going to say Carol Danvers on it. So like I said, it never materialized that way. But to your question, this I really like the sequence. To me, it really showed Jon Favreau is the perfect Happy. Reading the comic books, his chemistry with Robert Downey Jr. and ergo Tony's chemistry with Happy, it really melded well in that sequence. And of course, I always love a good Stan Lee cameo
As Larry King.
Yeah.
Both of them are sitting in heaven having some bagels and cream cheese and a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think caused Tony to develop a peeve of being handed things?
His parents.
I was going to say, I was trying to think if there was a scene in the first Iron Man that made me think about, but I really can't come up with anything because he was handed lots of stuff in the first film.
Yeah.
So I was like, I wonder where that happened. So at first I thought maybe it had something they were going to reference it somehow, but they never really did. It happens like 3 times in the movie, I think, total. And then it's totally forgotten about. It never is even mentioned again in any of the future MCU entries, as far as I know.
Well,
It's
he does stop a
in the
woman
first
from pulling
Avengers.
something out of her purse or in Civil War. But yeah, you're right.
That was to me. He thought it was a gun. The way he reacted to that.
Occupational hazard and whatnot. But
Right.
honestly, I think the possible reason is when Christine Everhart handed him the photos of Gomera from the first movie.
That's possible.
That's a good point.
It's like last time somebody handed me something, I saw nothing but death and destruction at what my work or in what my inventions has wrought. Essentially. So we then get to the serving the subpoena and the Senate hearing with the late great Gary Chandler as a
Gary Shandling.
Or Shandling, yeah. As a he is late. Like I said, folks, he is no longer with us. So R.I.P. Gary Shandling. And he wants the Iron Man weapon, in his words, turned over to the American people. Well, Tony Stark is handing the senator his ass on a platter because he's like, I'm sorry, but the suit, you can forget it. The suit and I are one. To turn over the Iron Man suit would be to turn over myself, which would be the same as indentured servitude, or in some states, prostitution.
Which you know something a little bit about, don't you, Senator?
I love that. He's like, I'm no expert in prostitution. Of course not. You're a senator. Come on. I mean, he's just playing with them, and you see Pepper in the back, are in the audience, just like shaking her head, like, "God damn it, will you just behave?" So then they call in Justin Hammer. No, not Rhodey yet. Justin Hammer first.
No, it's Hammer first. Yeah, Sam Rockwell.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I gotta say, I don't like Hammer's character, but that just goes to show you just how well Sam Rockwell played him.
I cannot wait to see him in Armor Wars.
I mean, it's like, honestly, this would have been the perfect time for them to bring in Justine. In Armor Wars, it would have been the perfect thing to do Justine Hammer, his daughter, because her father's rotting in prison for a lot of murder and mayhem that was committed by his own inventions later in this film. But it's like, would have been the perfect, because isn't she an actual villain in the comics? I believe she is
I can't remember.
I don't think I've read
like
a story with her.
No, I can't remember.
Lots with Justin Hammer, but not with Justine Hammer.
But yeah, so
with the daughter. I didn't even know he had a daughter, honestly.
I knew he did, but I thought that was another. I thought that was Ultimates, because I know in the Ultimates comics he's actually him and Obadiah are both younger. Because in the comics, Obadiah and Justin Hammer are his father's age, but in the Ultimate Universe, I know for sure Obadiah is actually his age as opposed to older. But I think it's the same with Justin Hammer.
She's the Crimson Cowl in the comics.
Crimson. Now I know who you're talking about. Okay.
Never heard of it, but that's amazing.
But yeah, so Hammer's like, or Justin's like, I defer to you, Anthony, and he calls him Anthony instead of Tony, which is Tony's preference and whatnot. And he takes a jab at Canada. For all my friends and close friends up in Canada, I'm laughing at your country, not at you guys, because you guys are awesome. However, your country is a little bit fucked up. But
a little.
Hey, ours is too. So
yes,
you can laugh at us too. But anyway,
we do it all
he's
the
like,
time.
I'd love to leave the house with the door unlocked, but this ain't Canada. And I'm like, oh my God, really? You just fucking went there? So then he says, God bless Iron Man, God bless America. And it's like, you just got done freaking trying to shoot his ass down. And then you say, God bless Iron Man? What the fuck? Because he wants Iron Man to be turned over because he wants to get his greedy little paws on it. And so then we get the new Rhodey, played by Don Cheadle now.
Oh, I love this Rhodey.
Ambassador has some thoughts on it, so let's hear them.
Don Cheadle as Rhodey was, I think, a great move considering the issues with Terrence Howard. Honestly, I wish they had Rhodey, or they had Don Cheadle from the word jump. And he's like, I love how they address it to the audience through a unconventional, intentional fourth wall break. It's me, I'm here, let's deal with it. I love that. I do. And I love, he slips into that role like hand in glove, like foot in a shoe, like bacon and eggs. He's perfect. And he banters very civilly with the senator. He's like, are you sure you're asking me to read excerpts out of context? And the senator's like, yeah, I know, I'm trying to screw this guy over. Who's your best friend?
I do understand, things have changed, but I do just read it.
And I just, it's Don Cheadle is just great in this. I love when Tony, I know we're talking about this, the hearing scene, so I can bring this up. I love when Tony's like, it's time for a little transparency. I'm like, ouch, burn. Transparency in a government hearing? Are you kidding? We can't have that. He's like, I'm commandeering your screens. I need them. And he's showing all the footage. Huh?
That's the wonderful thing about this. He does what the government sorely needs in real life: transparency.
Yes. But anyway, and he's showing all this footage from around the world, and he gets to Justin Hammer's footage of them trying to building a mech suit or an Iron Man suit. He's like, how did Hammer get this type of technology? And then we see the poor pilot get his back broken. And
Yeah,
you
it
hear
turns itself
Justin
around.
Hammer in the background on the video going, "Oh crap! Oh crap!"
Oh shit! Oh shit! And
I
Hammer has to
just
basically
crippled a
unplug
man.
the TV at the time. He finally gets. It's like, yeah, the
Yeah,
rest of the world 5 to 10 years. Hammer Industries 20.
he's 20. And Tony just absolutely owns that, sir. He's like, "It's working. You're welcome." He's
Yeah,
like, "I'm not a joiner, but I'll consider her Secretary of Defense if you ask nicely. Might have to amend the
yeah,
hours a little bit." It's just, I know the scene. I love this scene. This is one of my favorite scenes with Stark just owning people. And
yeah.
I know the senator at the end gets his little stab in, but you know what? He's a damn Hydra agent. And spoiler alert, yeah, the senator and Iron Man, played by Gary Shandling, is a Hydra supporter or sympathizer or whatever. So screw him.
Yeah.
I
mean,
hope that senator barks on hell, or he's
well,
being abused in prison, whichever works for you.
yeah. So, what did you think, Jacob, about the Senate hearing scene?
Flawless, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know much more I could add to Ambassador. He basically said all my thoughts. I will
I'm
say
sorry.
this is actually the first MCU movie I saw in theaters. I didn't see Iron Man until it came out on DVD. Same with the Incredible
Same.
Hulk. So
Same.
this was actually the first one I saw in theaters, and I was
Yeah.
really blown away by it. My first showing, I didn't care for it. Like, I still thought it was good, but it's not as good as the first one. But watching it more, and especially more recently, I have gained a greater appreciation for it and this sequence, because like, as you pointed out, Ambassador, how well they rolled Don Cheadle into the role of Rhodey. He personally, I think, and like I said, this is my own humble opinion, I do think Terrence Howard is a slightly better actor than Don Cheadle. However, I have to say that Don Cheadle really stepped into the role, and he has been better than Terrence Howard was as Rhodey. I think that he really owned the role. He really grabbed it by the horns, and now I struggle to remember. Oh yeah, Terrence Howard. That's right. He was the first Rhodey. So, but also I like how they brought in. There's a fan theory about the scene with Justin Hammer's suit, that in Doctor Strange, just before his car crash, when he's talking on the phone, guys, don't text and drive, where his assistant is saying, "Hey, there's a guy with a broken spine. He was involved in some sort of industrial accident," I think is what they say. There's a fan theory that is that guy from Doctor Strange. So I don't know if that's
Wow.
true or not. Marvel hasn't confirmed it, but I thought that I always think that that's kind of funny how fans make that. I do it all the time, but how people make those connections. I thought, oh, that was really interesting.
Honestly, I did not connect that, but Jacob, thank you for bringing that to my mind. Wow. Yeah, no, that's good. That's like, wow. Think
Well,
about it. Yeah.
it is amazing. It wouldn't surprise me, like you were talking about the handing things. I didn't even think about, oh yeah, last time someone handed me something, that how the callbacks going forward. The critics hate the callbacks, but us who enjoy these movies, we're like, we
Screw
love
critics,
the
really.
callbacks. What are you talking about?
We are the new critics. Screw the old critics. They all retire and let us do their job because we actually enjoy this crap. All they know is how to be artsy and fartsy and eat smelly cheese and drink wine.
I just realized I
Exactly.
was
Give me a good
muted this
bottle of
entire time.
Give me a
So yeah, I was gonna say
give me a good bottle of scotch and a cheeseburger. I'll be happy.
the broken spine thing from Doctor Strange. I always thought it was Rhodey because of Civil War.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but a few people have thought about the timing, because up until he gets to the Ancient One, it's been a long time. So some people have thought, well, maybe it was that scene particular takes place during Iron Man 2. But like I said, Marvel's never confirmed whether it was Rhodey or whether it was Rhodey from Civil War or this guy from Justin Hammer. So we don't know. Be nice
Yeah.
if they would.
Oh, there was
Well,
no
that's fine.
transparency from the politician, Daniel Martin. It was Tony who forced the transparency
Yeah.
with a transparent tool too, by the way.
Well, not to mention, they're trying to twist this whole thing about the Iron Man suit as a weapon. It's not a weapon; it's a prosthesis.
Yeah, it's
granted,
a
it's
great
a-
line.
high-tech prosthesis.
It's a high tech prosthesis that keeps Tony alive. Well, particularly the arc reactor more so, but the suit too. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it can't function without Tony. It's Tony's creation. Now, they could theoretically contract him, but Stark Industries no longer does weaponry. They're in
exactly.
energy
Which is
research,
why they
which-
actually went to Hammer Industries. Which is
Yeah,
why the
look what they
military
got,
went to Hammer.
Yeah,
Fun
look what they
fact.
got, a bunch of crap.
Neozoic. Fun fact number 3. Early version of the film story was going to include another Iron Man adversary, Ghost, but discarded, with Ghost later appeared in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but as a female adaptation. I had no idea that it was a gender bend.
Yeah, Ghost is a dude in the comics.
Yeah. So,
No biggie.
well, okay. But anyway, I thought it was fine in Ant-Man and Wasp, but we'll get to that when we get there.
Yes.
They show a map of Wakanda in this movie.
I thought the first Wakanda map was in the first Avengers. Because there's a scene where where they're wondering where Loki is going to strike next, and I thought that was the first reference to Wakanda, and then of course it
Very
gets name
possible.
dropped in Age of Ultron. But
Yeah, very possible.
I want to say it was actually Avengers when they first referenced Wakanda.
Well,
That would have been funny if Loki had tried to hit Wakanda. He would have gotten his ass handed to him.
quite possibly, indeed. But so we then see that after Tony's leaving and saying, "I will serve the people at the pleasure of myself," and one thing you can always count on is that I will always pleasure myself. And then we see Vanko listening in and just nodding like, "Yeah, keep talking it up, you dumbass." And then this is when he was making his plasma whips, and then he just slices
Yeah.
the TV in two.
Yeah.
So we see that Ivan is fully fueled with his rage, and he's using all of this as just more inspiration to keep doing what he's doing. So we then get to Jarvis and the palladium poisoning, which is at 24%. And we see just how the arc reactor in his chest is upgraded, where he's pulling out palladium chips or palladium cores that look like they have scabs around them when they're all burnt out.
Yeah,
essentially.
neutron damage is what
Yeah.
it's called.
Yep. And he's trying to find a new cure, but he's unable to. And this scene has a lot to unpack in it, where he's also promoting Pepper. But when he's walking through, when Pepper is there, he mutes Jarvis because Jarvis is saying maybe you should tell Pepper,
Yeah.
but he doesn't want to. And as he's moving through all of the laser or the CAD drafts, the virtual CAD drafts, if you pay close attention, the Mark V suit is, or the Mark V and its briefcase version is in among those plans.
Mhm.
So it's actually, or when he yells at Dummy saying that it's stop spacing out, the thing's already machining that part. That's actually what it's actually being machined, is the Mark V.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So we then see that Pepper is promoted to CBO or CEO of Stark Industries. And one line that is pretty funny is, "I don't care about the liberal agenda anymore. It's boring. I'm giving you a boring alert. You do it." And also, "I need you to wear a surgical mask if you're sick, because I don't want to get sick." And it's like, gosh, there's just so many things right now from that movie. It back in 2009, I think this movie is, and it's like,
Yeah, I
holy
think it came
crap!
out
If
a
they
year
only
later.
knew, if they only knew, 10 or 11 years later, what would be going on, you know?
And how?
Yeah, so, what did you guys think of him uh, promoting Pepper? I don't know what to think. Don't think, drink. And what did you guys also catch the designing of the Mark V in the virtual CADs or the virtual CAD drafts as he's walking through?
I caught the design probably like the fifth time I've watched this movie, but I've watched it. I actually watched a version of it that I didn't really care for. It would every once in a while like pause. I think this was on the Blu-ray edition. It would pause and zoom in and then like highlight something for you, and that's how I found out.
Oh, the
So I
special
cheated a little
editions,
bit.
yeah.
I finally figured out how to turn that off because it was driving me crazy. But as far as promoting Pepper Potts, I kind of expected it. That happens in the comics.
Mhm.
Actually, though, a fun fact about that in the comics, when she's promoted to CEO, she actually marries Happy. They don't reference that at all in the films. But she actually has enough of Stark's bullcrap, so her and Happy get together, just kind of as a mutual. We both have had enough of Stark, and they're actually married for a while. And I think that was while she was CEO of Stark Industries, but before Stark made his big comeback. But yeah, I always thought that was kind of funny that they didn't even go there in the movies. Not that I blame them, but I thought that was a really great scene. It was well acted. Gwyneth Paltrow, as much of an airhead as she is a very talented actress to
Yeah.
her
Yes.
credit. So I think she played once again. She just shows how good she is at this role and in this part. So fantastic.
Iron Man 2, Wakanda was marked as a hotspot for activities monitored by SHIELD as much or as such. It was displayed in the holographic maps used by the organization to oversee those activities, such as the ones present in the room where Nick Fury reunited with Tony Stark to discuss the formal so near
Oh, that
the
went
ending.
totally over my head. Well
Yeah,
done,
it's the
Daniel.
ending debrief.
I totally missed that.
Because there's also the Hulk or the Culver University Hulk report that's also going on in that very same scene, which everybody else is actually paying more attention to that. So, what did you think, Ambassador, of Pepper getting promoted? Pepper
It
promotion.
was awesome. Honestly, I think it was the most logical choice. I mean, she is about the only person that he could trust to take over Stark Industries as CEO. I mean, there's no one else really around him except for maybe Happy, but Happy doesn't necessarily have the business acumen. He isn't in there on a daily basis running Stark Industries. Pepper was. I mean,
He's
she was
muscle.
a muscle. Yeah, he's a chauffeur. He's muscle. He's his confidant. Everything aside from Pepper, she was an unofficial CEO even before she was a formal CEO. Let's be honest here.
Yep.
And sh the scene is, him trying to deal with palladium poisoning, him trying to figure out how am I going to fix this, and we'll talk about how he fixed it as we get to that part of the movie.
Yep.
But I wanted to touch on one thing really quickly, going back to the previous scene with the Senate scene and Ivan Vanko completing his suit and everything, completing the plasma whips. There, watching this the other night, just seeing Mickey Rourke play this role, he is a very underappreciated actor in my opinion, and this was a movie that really allowed him to a degree to really show that he could play a multi-layered, multifaceted character, not just some dumb brute or whatever. And I we'll get to that more so and everything, because I have some issues later on in the movie, not so much with what the direction that they take Ivan Vanko's character, but how much he isn't in the movie. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But as far as Stark or anything, he's trying to figure out how am I going to fix this, and he's having to figure out what am I going to do with Stark Industries. I can't just let it shift in the wind and go to some sleaze bag like Justin Hammer. So he's like, okay, Pepper, you run it, you do it, and she's like, okay. He's like, who else can I trust?
Also, he's also donating all of his belongings and whatnot.
Yeah.
His modern art collection, the
Boy Scouts of America.
To the Boy Scouts. She was actually down there bitching at him for that.
Yeah. And well, I get her having a beef with that because she did help him build that collection. She should have a say in least where it goes if it is going to be donated.
Yeah, she would have probably sent it to Girl Scouts. But anyway.
And what's wrong with that? Not a dang thing.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely not. A damn thing. So then we see that Ivan cut back to Moscow. Ivan's getting papers and from this shady looking guy who actually is from the special edition from the Blu-rays that Jacob mentioned, because I also had the Blu-ray and also watched those as well. That guy is part of the 10 Rings from the first movie.
Oh, interesting.
So he manages to contact, or they all have a special hatred for Iron Man, as we all well know. So it would make sense that they would actually help somebody who wants to kill Iron Man. So then we get to where is next?
Monaco.
No, the introduction to Natalia Romanoff, or Natalie Rushman.
Monaco. Yeah, Natalie Rushman.
Yeah, and then they actually had Scarlett Johansson do a lingerie spread, which has which Tony looks up while he's looking her up, and it's like, or we also see him doing some mixed martial arts. It's like, oh, it's mixed martial arts. It's been around for like 3 weeks.
It's called dirty boxing. It's been around forever.
Yeah. And that's when they see Natalie Rushman. And I love Gwyneth Paltrow. She's like, she's from legal and potentially a sexual harassment lawsuit waiting to happen. And he's like, yeah, I just feel like she's the one that I need for an assistant, And so Happy's in the ring with her. And I like how he calls her into the ring. And then he just takes a huge swig of his drink. And he's like, what? She didn't say anything. It's just like, what? So Happy gets his ass floored by
Natalie.
Yeah, Natalie. And she's like, I need your impression. I don't know. You have a quiet reserve. I don't know. You have an old soul. I mean, your fingerprint. Oh, right. And so he officially signs over Stark Industries to Pepper. And will that be all, Mr. Stark? No. Yes. Thank you, Natalie. And you have a good day and whatnot. I want one. No. And she can finally say that and smile about it because now he's off of the company. He's out of the company.
Well, not only that,
I think he's the chairman of the board still. I don't think he's totally.
He might be CBO, but he's not the CEO. But
he's the owner, but he does not have any. He no longer has any. He's still a stockholder. However, he does not run the company.
Right.
He can't run the company.
For sure.
He cannot dictate, or he cannot legally dictate what goes on in the company. He can advise, and whether or not they take his advice is up to them. But he cannot dictate policy. And hello to Vanya in the chat. Good to see you. One of my faithfuls.
Well, and I just gotta say, this is a little pet peeve. Aren't Pepper and Tony an item at this point? Aren't they like dating or whatever? So I thought
they're kind of just flirting.
It's more of a closer than what they had in the first relationship, but not quite to the relationship bit until the end of the movie.
still, I find that just I know Tony Stark is a bit of, at least he's coming out of his scummy stage. He's getting to his more reputable stage, but still, I mean, I know she's very attractive. She's very lovely. I mean, it's Scarlett Johansson for Pete's sake. And if she wasn't a loony liberal, I would go, "Hey, you want to go for a drink?" If I wasn't married. But
Yeah.
still, but for him to just say it to Pepper's face, "I want one," and I'm like, dude, that's your soon-to-be girlfriend, or if not your unofficial girlfriend at this point. Show
Well,
a little
maybe he
class.
needs-
Don't forget, in
He
the
needs a
context of the
wake-up call,
film,
which he receives later.
well, and also
in the
don't
movie.
forget, in the context of the film, he's dying, so he doesn't think he can pursue that
Yeah.
kind of relationship with Pepper. You know, I'm not justifying, you know, being
No,
a
I-
playboy
no, I-
or whatever. I'm just saying, in the context of the film, he is dying, so he doesn't think he can pursue something more meaningful with Pepper. So he
Yeah.
probably is thinking, I want to have, you know, a last hurrah, if you will.
And yeah, no, and
Uh,
I get
don't-
that.
So
and
that's just that
that's-
was my take on it. You know, after
and
the fourth time I watched it, I think.
Well,
Yep.
and I've picked up on that, but I just, that's one of the things about this movie that when I first saw it and everything, like you, Jake, this was the first MCU movie I saw in theaters because I never got to see Iron Man, I never got to see Incredible Hulk. This was my first theatrical MCU movie before it was formerly known as the MCU or even the Infinity Saga. But I always had an appreciation for this movie because obviously it's a fun movie, it's a great movie, but like certain movies, it speaks to me personally because I've never had to deal with my own mortality, but I know people in my life who did, particularly my dad. And I'm gonna go into a whole spiel here, but we all deal with death, our own mortality differently, particularly when we know the fact that we are dying or we could be dying. And Tony's behavior in this movie, while it is extremely erratic, imagine how you might react if you find out, hey, the clock is ticking. I've only got a matter of a year, a few months, a few weeks, a few days. Imagine how
Mhm.
you might react. Look at how Tony reacts. Yes, it's very, very erratic. Yes, it's very chaotic, but that is Tony's personality to a degree, at least Tony at this point. So everything that he does, while yes, it is extremely damaging, is extremely erratic, at the same time, it makes a degree of sense.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Definitely. So then we get to Monaco, or I call this Monaco Mayhem in my talking points. And we also get a cameo of the Twitter CEO and the Twitter owner, Elon Musk.
Oh
But-
man, yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Elon was in the MCU,
Yep.
and there was, and to quote one of my other favorite movies, and there was indeed much rejoicing. Yay!
Exactly. I mean, how many people? Because Elon now or a lot of people now hate Elon Musk. It's like,
I will never hate.
how
Elon
many
Musk.
people forget that he's in the MCU? I mean, I believe some of the MCU actors and actresses have actually hated the fact that Elon bought Twitter because a lot of them freaked out because of the blue check thing right now. And it's like, you guys don't forget he's one of your co-stars.
Yeah,
you
he
show
had
that
a
motherfucker some
cameo
respect.
scene in one movie, but still,
Mm-hmm.
and amazingly, it worked.
Hey, man, I don't support everything that Elon Musk is doing at Twitter, but I do like what he's doing with the shakeup and whatnot.
I'm more
I do
interested in
wish that-
SpaceX, but that's
I
me.
do wish that he would not pay for certain celebrities' blue checks because he did take pity on some of them. And it's like, no, you don't give them back their freaking blue checks. If you're going to say that you want everybody else to pay for blue checks, you make them pay for the blue checks as well. But anyway, moving on. Hammer is also at Monaco, and Christine Everhart, the return of Christine Everhart, which Stark tries to make extremely uncomfortable, but she actually handles it pretty damn well. And she
Yes,
asks
she does.
Pepper for a quote for her powerful women issue. And this was before any of the identity politics and buzzwords became buzzwords, folks.
Mm-hmm.
So so there's no real problem with it there. And I do love how Stark basically is like, or she asks him, this is the first time you guys have seen each other since the Senate hearing. Yeah, since the Senate revoked your status or your
Contract.
contract, or he's like, yeah, it's on hold. Is it on hold or was it canceled? I think you mean canceled. What's the difference between on hold and canceled? And she actually is like, yeah, what is the difference? I mean, she actually takes Tony's side in this. She's actually taking now another fun thing is, I believe that Sam Rockwell and the girl who plays Christina Everhart are married in real life.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I do believe that they are actually married in real life. From the special, or that's from the special edition of Iron Man 2 on the DVD.
Yeah,
I believe it's revealed.
Vanya confirmed in the chat. Leslie Bibb, Sam Rockwell's wife.
Yep. And
He did well for
thank you,
himself.
Vanya. Huh?
Just like James Gunn.
Yeah. So, yeah, and Elon Musk's thing, because this is when they were walking through. He's like, "I have an idea for an electric jet." Well, if you have an idea, I'll make it work. For Tony Stark, just being Tony. So then he goes and checks his palladium levels, which are at 59% now, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Got any more bad ideas?" Well, yes, he does. He's going to drive in the Monaco Grand Prix.
And he does pretty good for himself.
He pisses off his own driver, who freaking throws a fit and storms off, because he's the one that throws the helmet.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, damn. Well, and he's like, well, what's the
Which
use
is a
of
major
having
faux
race
pas in
car?
racing, by the way, throwing your helmet.
Yeah.
That's
like,
how mad he was.
What's the use of having a race car?
Race car.
Has the person translate if you don't get to drive it? And Christine Everhart's getting ready to do a quote, but she then sees this and she's like, I gotta go. And this is great stuff. Don't worry. And he's like, well, why don't you just read it back to me? And she just completely destroys Hammer by disregarding
Blows him off.
Yeah, blowing him off. And it's so freaking great. And then Hammer looks at the TV just as Tony Stark points at the TV like, yeah, fuck you, Hammer. So before we get into the second half of this scene, what did you guys think of the first half of the Monaco scene?
Really
Elon,
well.
the whole spiel.
Really good Playboy vibes, because in the first film we get to see Tony Stark being that Playboy rich CEO, right? The unstable inventor, so to speak, very stable genius. But we don't really get to see it a whole lot in the first film, because right away he's he's on a plane, then he gets captured and all that. But then in this one, we actually get to see some of that side to him of being with his peers, so to speak, in Monaco, being with Elon Musk and being with Justin Hammer. So I really appreciated it for that reason, for us getting to see a little bit, because they don't really go there a whole lot in the future of the MCU. Outside of, I guess, Captain America Civil War, you could count that a little bit. But I really appreciated that about that scene, is getting to see that side of Stark.
Ambassador.
Elon Musk is a national and world treasure. We must protect him at all costs, because he is our Tony Stark in real life.
We'll see.
He will take us to Mars. He will invent nanosuit technology, and he will invent the giant flying hover ship. Count on it. If he can do a rocket, he can do a flying hover ship that can cloak itself. But
you're talking about the helicarrier.
The hover carrier, yes, I am.
Helicarrier, not hover carrier.
Helicarrier.
Excuse me. Mr. Orange, you said one word wrong. Shame on you.
Yeah, that's enough of that shit. I love you, buddy. But as a yeah, flipping the British
your
bird,
butt.
I could do that too. But anyway,
Yeah, but I did it better.
you're doing
Okay,
that because
kid.
you've been watching Spike do it enough on Buffy. But anyway, so we get to
Well,
the second half.
Can I at least get my thoughts on that scene?
Sure. Yes. Get your thoughts on it.
Elon Musk was great. Tony was being his playboyish self, and he's like, let's see, how else can I screw things up and act erratic? Oh yeah, I'll go try my own race car, which I actually have no skill at doing yet. He somehow pulls it off, and
Yeah.
and yeah, that whole scene and everything where the cameraman cuts to Tony right when he's looking right into the camera, and Tamara looks right at the TV, and it's like a fourth wall break within a fourth wall break within a fourth wall break, and he's like, that's like 16 walls.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
Neozoic has a question that I wanted to wait till we get there to the point in the movie, but this is the second time he asked, so he's insistent.
yes.
Orange Hat and others, what are your opinions on the retcon of the young boy with Iron Man mask is the young Peter Parker? Well, they considered that it was the age in which this actually happened, so that he was about not that was like a 9-year-old kid, and he was born around that time, or Peter Parker was born around 2001. Peter Parker in the MCU did not live to see 9/11, so he was not alive during 9/11. So the attack on New York would have been their version of 9/11.
Mm.
So, but also, yeah, I think that it's okay because it is confirmed, but you don't really pick up on it, you know? I mean, yes, they do a good job at modeling Parker as somebody who deeply admires Stark, but at this point, I think that it was an okay addition with the retcon. I mean,
I
who
don't
else
care
would
either
the
way,
boy have been?
honestly. I think it's
Who
cool
else-
that it's
yeah.
Peter, but I'm like, okay, cool.
Who
It's not
else
that
would the
deep
boy
to
have
me.
been? Like, who else would
Could
he
have
have
been
been?
just a random.
Yeah.
Honestly, I when they announced it and everything, when they made that retcon, that very minor retcon, I was like, yeah, cool. It makes a nice connection between Iron Man 2 into Civil War and then into Homecoming and all the way through to No Way to Far From Home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm cool with it. Absolutely.
Alrighty. And then we get as the race is going on.
Thank you, Daniel.
Oh God, Ivan, that's his name. Ivan, Mickey Rourke.
Then
He gets he's in as one of the crash crew. That was his into Monaco. So he then just goes right into the track and announces himself by whipping or starting his little whipping frenzy with the cars. And we get introduced to his attack on Stark, where he cuts open Stark's car, and well, Happy and Pot or Pepper are driving into the racetrack themselves to try to get to Tony with the football, which is as clear as day as what it might be. I mean, the just screaming red and silver briefcase. I mean, it's like, yeah, I think we know what that is. So we then get to see the Mark V, which is the red and silver armor.
mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, I do like how that armor goes on. And it's like, that is really cool. And what do you guys think of the whole sequence where he's actually able to deflect some of the blasts and actually gets the upper hand on Stark at first? that is actually something that was pretty cool because it's like, oh crap, he's actually doing exactly what he talks about later. If you can make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. So it really is a great scene, and I'll give my thoughts first, where he takes it, or before Stark can even launch an attack, he's already taken out one of his repulsors on his left hand, and then he starts or starts ripping into his armor, tossing him around and whatnot. And it's only until afterward when he starts trying to surge the suit that Stark is able to insulate and take him down, and then crushes the arc reactor while Vanko's being dragged off. You lose, Stark. You lose. I mean, it's quite, or nobody knows what this means at first because it's, or everybody's like, who the hell is this nutcase, you know? Or what does he mean by you lose? Well, we learn later on in the cell, which we'll discuss in a moment after we give our thoughts on this. What did you guys think of this? We'll start with the Ambassador.
It's a very intense scene, which it is meant to be because this is the first time, well, in a while, in a movie and a half, where Stark actually has a rival on his level. I mean, let's be honest here. Obadiah, even in the Ironmonger armor, he was not a rival. He was kind of a technological cannibalist. Ivan Vanko built his arc reactor, built those electron whips or anything from the ground up. So you know that he can do the tech on his own. He just has to have the resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he strategizes his attack, it shows that he put some forethought into this. He's just not some brute who just goes in guns a-blazing. So on that level as well, it shows that Ivan Vanko does know how to strategize. He isn't the most high-level tactician, but he's a decent tactician.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got the tension: is Pepper and Happy going to get to join with the football, the Mark V transportable
platform.
suit, which is the first iteration of a transportable suit or a miniaturized suit that we see. I mean, think about it. In the first movie, it's held in the basement. Now it's as small as a briefcase. In a few movies, it's going to be completely miniaturized and voice controlled.
Mm-hmm.
That just shows you how far Tony is leaping ahead and thinking ahead.
Yep.
And the fight between him and Ivan is very intense once Tony gets the armor on. And he's having to figure out, okay, how to have this guy. He's taking out part of my suit. And once he does, he incapacitates him, but then, and I have to say, when Happy is hitting him with the car, I honestly would have thought it would have done more damage, but I don't know if maybe the suit or anything, or the harness that he's wearing is kind of has a buffer or something around it, so they can't smash into him as hard as they normally would be able to, or what have you. I think, but it surprised me all he is spitting up some blood. I would have thought he would have some more internal energies and injuries from being hit by a car of that size.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those are just my thoughts on the sequence, Jake.
For me, I was geeking out over seeing the Mark V armor because the Silver Centurion armor is one of my favorite Iron Man armors. That's what it's called in the comic books. Stark, it was his Gen 3 in the comics. It was originally, the more sturdy armor. Then it was that one that had the weird round top, and then it was the Silver Centurion. And I actually think for a while, Stark quit being Iron Man, and Rhodey actually wore it for a little while. I can't remember if that was the Silver Centurion or the one after, but
I think
nonetheless,
it was the one after.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
okay.
One after. I might
that
be
makes
wrong,
sense.
but I think.
But the Silver Centurion one is really iconic It was when the Iron Man solo comic was still going on at the time. I believe he fought fellow Avenger Stingray in it, who also has a super powered suit. The two of I can't remember why they fought, but it was probably for some dumb reason, like when the Fantastic Four fought the X-Men. It was it just had these iconic moments in Iron Man history. So I was full on. I think I was even I think I was even slapping my dad's shoulder. I was sitting next to him in the movie theater. I was like, Dad, it's the Silver Centurion armor. And he was like, okay, take it down a notch. We're in a theater. That kind of reaction was what he gave me. But yeah, I definitely was enjoying that sequence a great deal. And like you said, it really showed how Whiplash was a threat to Stark, how Ivan was a threat to him, that he came in with this plan. One of the more sinister things about him is he didn't necessarily want to destroy Stark or to kill Stark, but he wanted to destroy his legacy. And that is sometimes, yep, there it is.
Yep, that
is sometimes more dangerous than a villain who just wants to go crazy and take you out like Obadiah Stane. So I love this sequence. I think it's awesome. Like I said, Silver Centurion armor, totally iconic, and I love the fact that the MCU gave a nod to it.
As am I.
I will disagree with you guys. It's only until later, at the suggestion of Hammer, that he goes after his legacy. Because at this point, he just wants Tony Stark dead. Because this attack is very upfront and brutal. He goes straight for Tony. Now, I do understand that, or I do agree later on that is his purpose, is to destroy his legacy. And he uses Hammer brilliantly to do that. Remember when Scarlett Johansson was, hey, Society Reviews, how you doing, buddy?
Sorry, she's still attractive.
Yeah, she, to a degree, she is, but I still wouldn't touch her.
Oh, but I'm not saying I would touch her, but I can't say that she isn't attractive.
Yeah. So then we get to him talking to him in the cell, and he tells him, you focused ionized channels, or you focused plasma through ionized channels. It's effective, but not very efficient. You could have doubled up your rotations. It's a passable knockoff. And then he tells him, you come from a family of thieves and butchers. And like all guilty men, you rewrite your own history. So he then tells him, speaking of thieves, where'd you get these designs? From my father, Anton Vanko. Well, I never heard of him. My father is the reason you're still alive. And so then he comes up with the next thing. He's like, if you can make God bleed, or because he told him, he's like, I am alive because you took a shot and you missed. He's like, did I? If you could make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. And then there will be blood in the water and the sharks will come. This sticks with Stark, by the way, all the way to the last two Avenger movies. And to basically give you an idea, I'll talk about it here. When he hits Thanos and actually manages to cut him, all that for a drop of blood, that's also is something which was a callback to this movie, Iron Man 2. If you can make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. By making Thanos bleed later on, he knows Thanos can be defeated. So,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it's also a Rocky IV reference. There's in the scene when Rocky is fighting Ivan Drago, there's Drago's been undefeated. He killed Apollo Creed, right? Mm-hmm. Rocky is boxing him, and I want to say it's round 3 or 4. He cuts Ivan Drago, and then Rocky's coach, who was once Apollo Creed's coach, said, "You cut him. He's not a machine. He's a man. You can beat him." Yep. And I kind of made that when I kind of made that connection when I saw Iron Man 2 as well. Is but they're flipping it. It's instead of the protagonist thinking this, it's the antagonist thinking this. And then, like you said, then they flip it again when it goes to Avengers Infinity War. So I it's I thought that was that's an interesting concept that, floats around every once in a while.
Yep. And it's also Drago actually says the opposite in the or in that
That's
very
true, he
same scene.
does.
He's like, he's not human. He's like a piece of iron.
I can't knock him down.
Yeah, I can't knock it down. But yeah, so then he tells him, and where are you going to be watching the world consume me? All right, from a prison cell. I'll send you a bar of soap. And even though a lot of people would get a laugh, they almost don't catch what Ivan says. Hey, Tony, before you go, palladium in the chest, pretty painful way to die. And that's basically causes Tony to stop for a second before he gets out. So what did you guys think of this scene, the discussion to Vanko, or between Vanko and Stark? Ambassador.
Ivan's metaphorology is slightly off. And let me explain why, as someone who went through seminary. I'll keep it short. Don't worry. I'm not going to drag you down a bunch of theology. To make God bleed, we did make God bleed because Christ was God incarnate. So we made God bleed, and people believed in him still. Now I get what he's going for, but you could have come up with a better metaphor than saying, if you make God bleed, nobody will believe in him. Sorry, but that's not factually or theologically true.
If you're a pagan, it's true, though. The old gods don't bleed. That's why they demand blood sacrifices.
Granted, yeah.
Well, not only that, maybe he's referring to him not as God himself, but as somebody who is a top tier adversary.
Or someone who thought he was a god.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Tony Stark...
An innovative god.
Tony Stark never... I don't think Tony Stark ever regarded himself as godlike or as a deity of any kind, maybe a pagan one, but not in the monotheistic sense. But we're getting off on a big tangent here. Ivan's threat and his warning is very chilling, and it's delivered perfectly. It really is. It gets the sentiment across very well, even though Stark doesn't fully believe it, until Vanko does say, hey, Tony, play him in the chest, very painful way to die. And it does cause Stark to pause, but he already knows this. Ivan's not telling him anything he doesn't already know. Tony knows he's dying. The only thing Ivan does is reiterate that fact. So, while it's a cool line, it loses some of its bite because Stark already knows that he's dying. So, cool scene, but the payoff at the end is honestly, in my opinion, just a little bit weak. Because to tell a dying man he's dying is no threat.
Well,
So,
he also lets Tony know that he is like, I know you're dying because that's a very lethal way to live.
Granted, still, if go ahead, Jake.
Oh, go ahead.
Really. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was
Jake.
just going to say, I felt more like it was you think you have the secret, but I know your secret. Like, I don't think it was a threat necessarily. It was more, to me, it was more of a, how should I put this? Like just a sinister way to let him know, I know more than you think I know. And, it's, in the previous statements where they're kind of going back and forth, and Stark isn't really, he's doing his Stark thing, right? He's joking. I'm going to send you a bar of soap. But then when Ivan says that about the palladium, then Stark is silent. He has no comeback for that. So that, he breached some sort of wall with Stark. So that's what I think it was more about. He kept trying to poke at Stark. He delivers the iconic "If you make God bleed" line, and then he's. I don't think it was necessarily a threat. It was more of, "Hey, you're not as smart as you think you are because I know your secret." And like I said, Stark, who always has a comeback, doesn't have a comeback for that. So that's that was kind of my take on it.
And that's not a bad take either.
Yeah.
Really, that's not a bad take. There's no bad take with this because either way,
Yeah,
you
for sure.
slice it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
dude, BVSGU Blade.
So
BVS. Does this
we
movie
then-
suck?
One of the worst
Yes.
lines ever delivered.
yeah. So then we
by,
get
by,
to
by an actor who deserved better.
yeah. So then we get to the plane ride back, and the Senator Prick is on TV talking about Tony and shit talking him, and then Tony comes out with a kind of weird omelet for Pepper, and he's like, "Where do you think I've been for the last 3 hours?" It's like took you
Took
3
you 3
hours
hours to make an
to
omelet?
cook an omelet, dude. I mean, yikes. Hey, as much as I love you, Tony, 3 hours, man.
The guy's skill
How
is
many
not in the
eggs?
kitchen. It's in a lab.
How many eggs did you kill to make that omelet? How many eggs
Ooh.
did you freaking spoil for that omelet?
And it didn't
Is it weird that
it didn't
Pepper
look
Potts
like
and
a
Black
bad
Widow-
omelet. It just looks like it was a
Well,
little.
3
it's a
hours
little
of trying.
Yeah.
Well,
And
let's be honest here. Who amongst us could actually cook a decent omelet?
I
I
could.
can.
Okay.
I can.
I can do it. I can do a pretty good omelet.
You give me, me specifically, I'm not a person that does the whole bells and whistles with peppers and other stuff. But you give me a little
That's
bit
not
of
an omelet.
mozzarella cheese, you give me some mushrooms, you give me some eggs and whatnot. I can do an omelet.
Bring
That's
on the
not an
bacon.
omelet.
Bacon omelet too, yeah. I could do those too. But anyway, so he's talking with Pepper, and he wants to just retreat. He wants to tell her that he's dying, but
Yeah.
she, as CEO, now she has more responsibility, and so she also is like, we all don't run on batteries, Tony, which is a nice little cute line, but this is also the beginning of this is actually plays very much in the end of the Infinity Saga, where she says, "You can rest now," when he dies. This is a person who doesn't, or ever since Ivan Vanko came up against him, Tony has put his gears into motion to go, or to push his innovations even further than what he was currently doing. He was going at a nice slower pace, but ever since other people were able to get his tech or make his tech and has knowledge of his tech, he just went nuts with his tech, or in pushing the further forward. Now, a lot of people think it's because of what happens in New York, and they don't seem to realize just the heavy impact of Anton Vanko really having that big of an impact on Tony. This is a person who knows Tony's tech, can make it himself, and he has to be prepared for somebody else to come up with those thoughts, or to come up with that idea themselves and do the same thing. So it's actually Anton Vanko who pushes Tony to do a quantum leap forward with his own with his technological breakthroughs. That's my thoughts on it anyway. So then we get to it's the plane sequence is a small little sequence, but the main one after that is Vanko breaking out of jail with help from the guards and the decoy inmate, who looks as brain dead as you can imagine. I mean, this dude looks like he's like, "Eh, what's going on, man? We had this shit. Oh fuck, I'm dead. I mean, because Vanko just dashes this dude like really freaking quickly, and then he does the third. Or it's like, man, folks, take it from somebody who's been in jail. The potatoes are usually pretty decent, and that's or goes against what a lot of people usually say. But the potatoes actually are pretty decent. However, I would not suggest eating those potatoes because, well, you might
They're C4.
you might have explosive diarrhea, shall we say?
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, really.
Really?
Exactly.
And you complained about the stream having no class, and you make a joke like that.
Shut your fucking mouth! Shut the fuck up, you cunt! Shut it!
Damn right, really. But anyway.
Up your bum.
Oh.
I'll show you permanent damage, you wee fuck! Kratos, throw me at him!
But anyway, getting back to it. So we learn that Hammer breaks him out. And I gotta say, man, Hammer flies his ice cream from San Francisco to Monaco. Or from wherever he is. And I'm like, organic ice cream. Could this dude be any more soy? I mean, really.
That guy's brain is a bag full of cats. You can smell crazy on him.
I mean, that's all I'm going to say about Justin Hammer. But then we get I want my bird. I want my bird. I want my bird. And freaking, you'd think that if you're going to work with a Russian guy, you might want to learn a bit of Russian, you know?
There's your bird. You opened the door, I just walked through it.
Yeah, and I'll freaking kill your bird too. Anyway, so
I'm right here.
What do you guys think about the breakup and the breakout, not the breakup, but the breakout and the deal with Hammer?
Well, personally, I always think it's funny that the MCU always gets jabs at Europe's in a lot of their movies. Europe is always portrayed as corrupt. They're easily bribed. They can basically, the Marvel superheroes in the MCU just walk all over Europe. So, and we see this in Morocco, right? You've got Ivan. He's in a Moroccan prison, and Justin Hammer bribes it to such an extent he gets a fake lookalike in the prison, and he gets the prison guards to personally drive him to where Justin Hammer's plane is. And we see this time and time again in the MCU. They're always making digs at Europe. Captain America Civil War is probably the biggest, and most recently in Wakanda Forever when they make the French look like total goofballs. So yes. I always think that that's kind of funny. It was a pattern I started to notice like into phase 3. I'm like, I just realized Europe is getting hammered. That's just an aside. I just think it's funny to note.
It is funny.
But yeah, I think it's to me, it's not as good as a meeting of the minds between the two villains, because clearly Ivan, as you point out, he's a very decent strategist compared to Justin Hammer, and Hammer more so wants to use Ivan's brain, right? He doesn't even really care to hurt Tony. He just wants to make his tech, better than Tony's, obviously. So I think that we'll see a lot of, when it comes to Justin Hammer, or I should say we did see a lot when it comes to Justin Hammer and with Ivan. I don't remember them ever working together in the comics. I don't even think Whiplash was in the 90s Iron Man the animated series, or maybe Red Cyclone was, but I don't really remember. But I remember Justin Hammer and the Mandarin being a big deal in that series. So for me, even as a fan, it was kind of hard for me to pick them or see them together because they were so different. Ambassador, what do you think? Because to me, it was, it seemed like it was a good scene. I'm not saying that it was poorly acted or whatever, but their characters are just so different that the scene felt a little awkward to me. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but if you look at it this way, Ivan needs resources because he is resources poor. He's got the intellect, but he doesn't have the resources to carry out his designs, his inventions, and ultimately his plan. And I'll say this, their personalities are very dissimilar, except for the fact that one wants to supplant Tony Stark, the other one wants to destroy Tony Stark.
Right.
Or anything. And obviously you know which one's which. The interesting thing for me with Ivan and Hammer is, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Ivan is kind of the muscle of the pair, and he seems
true.
to be actually smarter than Hammer. Hammer has this, he has this industry. It's called Hammer Industries, obviously. So he's doing something right. But he seems too much of a bungler. He seems too much of a he seems too goofy to be menacing, per se. Now, they do make him menacing to a degree, enough for him to be a threat, but at the same time, all Ivan sees him as is a means to an end to enact his revenge on Stark. And while I agree with everything, that it does seem odd to see the two of them in the same space, for the sake of the film itself, they do work, the two characters do work well together. But in the comic book space, I don't know if you would pair those two characters together because they are so dissimilar. Anything, unless you're telling a story very similar to the one they're doing here in Iron Man 2. They wouldn't work necessarily any place else in this particular dynamic.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does. All right, so the next scene is damage control. Stark's learning about the Vankos, and Rhodey shows up talking to Tony about how the National Guard wants to roll up and take his suits, and it's like, Tony, you think he's actually drunk because he's sitting in his car and whatnot. No, it's because the palladium level is like 75 freaking percent, and the high-tech crossword puzzle, as Rhodey puts it, is crawling up his neck.
Mm-hmm.
And now Rhodey knows he's dying. And so it's like, oh shit. So we then see Vanko at Hammer's factory, and he breezes past the firewall, and he's like, software, and he's like, what? Software shit. Yeah, so okay. So he's like, let's generate some encrypted paths. Software shit, man. I mean, that doesn't tell you anything about how bad Hammer is. It really should, folks. He is just that bad. A freaking physicist, not a hacker, a physicist, busted through his firewall in a second. So yeah, and then he's like, "What do you want them to do?" Well, I want them to put me in the Pentagon for the next 20 years. And he's like, I want to take a dump I want to steal the show at Tony's Expo. I want to take a dump into Tony Stark's yard. You know what I mean? Oh, I could do that, no problem. I mean, suddenly when you hear freaking Vanko say that, I'm thinking to myself, Is he gonna actually go in the front or in Tony's front yard and actually take a dump? Because that's how crazy Mickey Rourke is in real life, folks. um, him and Ron Perlman. But yeah, it's
Hey,
But,
Hey,
national
Ron
treasure.
Perlman solved sexism in Hollywood by pissing on his hand.
Ron
Don't forget that.
Perlman also writes things on his furniture in his own shit. So
I just lost a massive amount of respect for Ron Perlman. That makes me sad.
yeah,
because
sorry, I
loved
didn't
him-
mean to
I lo-
break it to you, buddy.
Because I love him in the
But,
Hellboy
yeah,
movies, both the live action and the animated ones. Ron Perlman,
He's
how
a great
dare
actor.
you?
Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah,
Ron
brilliant
Perlman's a
actor.
great actor.
No, I
But-
get that, but still.
He's
Come on,
batshit
dude.
insane. He writes shit in his.
Okay,
writes
we get it. Move on
his
to the movie.
hatred in his own. shit.
Okay,
But anyway.
we get it. Move on to the movie.
Yes. So, Damage Control and Vanko at the
Yeah.
factory. What are your guys' thoughts on those scenes?
Well,
start
like we were
with
talking
Jacob
about
this time.
earlier. Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll start with you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I'm used. I just jump in. I'm sorry about that. It's just a bad habit. Whenever again, it's like what we were talking about in the previous scene when they first meet. It really shows that Hammer is the one with the money, and Ivan is the one with the strategy. And it's to me, one of the things that is really well written about this movie is how subtle Ivan is. So he doesn't just come on, he's got access to Hammer's computers already, right? But he doesn't turn on all the suits and say it's my company now, right? He just slowly works with the resources that Hammer gives him and slowly begins that takeover so he can get revenge on Stark. I just thought it was I thought that was really impressive. It's not a big shock and awe. It's a slow, subtle takeover. And Hammer, though he gets frustrated with what he perceives as the progression of this big event, it actually he doesn't get a clue that, hey, maybe Ivan's up to something, bigger than just building suits for you and later droids. So that was my take on that section of it.
Ambassador.
It would have been it would have been a whole lot easier to just have Ivan come in. I own your company now. You work for me. But that would have killed the entire momentum of the arc for both characters, for Hammer and for Ivan. And it's a nice touch and everything, shifting over to the scene between Rhodey and Stark and everything. I do want to bring up something, and this might be something that only a few hardcore fans like myself would know. There is a story arc in the 90s where Stark is dying, and he is infected with some sort of technological virus that has that very similar design that they show on his skin around the arc reactor and then slowly creeping up his neck. And I actually used to have that particular arc. I used to have the issue that had Stark in a casket. And it had a reflection of the Iron Man suit. I think it's Rhodey in the suit, staying next to or staying above the casket. I love the fact that they did pull that particular callback from the comics and put it into the movie here. And while obviously Stark doesn't die until much later, and we know why and how and so on. As a hardcore comic book fan, I love that attention to detail. And you do see, honestly, I think Cheadle did a better job of playing a more empathetic Rhodey than I know what you said, Jake, but I respectfully disagree. I think Don Cheadle is a much better actor than Terrence Howard. And I can't see that particular version of Rhodey being as empathetic and as caring to Stark as Don Cheadle's performance as Rhodey was. But that's just my take. So
Also, I forgot to mention that in this scene, if you pay attention to what Hammer says, he openly admits that he cut safety corners with the suits because he's enthusiastic and he wanted them out so quickly. Kind of reminds you of somebody else we know who cut corners with fatal repercussions at that point, though. But yes, moving on. Birthday party. Piss in the suit.
oh,
Target practice. Drunken fight with Rhodey. Now, this whole scene, folks, it really there's the deleted scene that also has Widow trying on the gauntlet. And it was also
in the trailer too.
Trailer. Yeah, it was also in the trailer, and it's like, well, where is this scene? You know? And then we find out later on in the DVD that it's a deleted scene. And you think that because they have it at a certain level, height-wise with the camera, that they're talking about something totally different, but then she brings up the gauntlet, you know? But I do like how he asks her, he's like, hypothetically, if this was your last birthday on Earth, how would you spend it? Well, she tells him, I wouldn't, or I'd do whatever I wanted, how I wanted, and I wouldn't have cared who I did it with, you know? And so he just goes all out with he's in the Iron Man suit, and a lot of questions that people ask me is like, or how do you go, or what do you do when you got to pee in the suit, or how do you go pee in the suit, or whatever. Just like that.
just like that.
He actually pisses the suit. And also, the DJ Goldstein is actually a real DJ, by the way, folks. Just so you know.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yep. And hello to Christian Freaks in the chat. Yep, we already covered that. Kate Mara was better here than in.
That's the name of the actress. I couldn't remember her name. Kate Mara.
That was
Yeah,
it. Kate Mara, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Which
Christian.
actress was
Appreciate
she?
it, buddy.
She was the Marshal.
Yeah.
Right.
The Marshal.
And which one was she in Lame Four Stick?
She was Sue.
Oh, come on. Really? You have to ask?
Really?
You don't.
You're not
Well,
in the
I
one
kind of block
with
it out of my
not-
mind, dude. So.
The Jessica Alba. She was in 2 of them, and then Kate Mara was Fan Forstick, where apparently the director had a mental breakdown on the set.
Come on, Orange. You should know.
Well, I had a
this.
mental breakdown watching that movie, but anyway.
That's not the point.
So- Oh,
What
quit
the
your
heck,
bitching.
dude? I beg
So,
your pardon. I'm
you
trying to
heard me.
educate you.
Well, it's falling on deaf ears. But anyway, so we then see that Rhodey arrives, and he's like, I just stuck my neck out for this guy, and well, he has no intention, or Stark has no intention of behaving. He is drunk as fuck. He wants to kiss Pepper, but she's like, you just peed the suit. That's not sexy. And it's time, or the party's over. Well, all right. The party is over. The after party is going up in 15 minutes. And if anybody has a problem with that, Pepper, well, there's the door. And he accidentally fires off a shot, busting up the glass. And everybody thinks, oh, well, this is fun because he's, and so it's like, okay. And then you have these freaking Playboy Rabbit wannabes freaking tossing up champagne bottles, and he's just automatically goes to shoot him. And it's like, then we get the Gallagher with the watermelon. And because of this, we see Rhodey like, oh, this has gone too far now. He gets the Mark II platform, silver suit, and we get freaking Battle of the Iron Man or armor battles or
Iron
whatever you
Man.
want to say. Yep, the Iron Man duking it out. Now, one of the things I do like in this entire fight sequence, I mean, the entire fight sequence is funny and great and whatnot, but when you see Rhodey coming up through the hole he made with Stark in the floor, when you see him coming up saying had enough, you actually see him wobbly because he's not used to using the suit very well. This is his first time in the suit. And it's also kind of a callback when he finally gets into the suit. When he looks over at the Mark II from the first movie, Rhodey's character, and he says, "Next time, baby." Well, yeah, this is indeed true. But I do, it's like when he tells him, "Shut, you don't deserve to wear one," and he shuts down. And he's like, "No, put that thing back where you found it before somebody gets hurt." Ding! Goldstein. Give me a fat beat to beat my buddy's ass too. So, what did you all think of this fight? That also sets up the climax for the movie later on with the colliding arc beams as well. So we'll start with Ambassador this time.
I absolutely this scene is funny, it's intense, and it's emotionally deep. And who knew? Well, of course, I knew. We all knew that Jon Favreau can pull this type of directing off. I frankly don't get the Jon Favreau hate. I never have. I don't care if it's MCU that he's working on or Star Wars. I don't get why this man is so treated so belligerently, because he does nothing but make good shows and make good movies. But to start off and everything, the scene between him and Natalia, she's playing a role, but at the same time, you get the feeling that she's actually being very genuine with him. This is as real as Natasha as we'll see her in this movie, except for maybe a handful of other scenes, and particularly in this movie. And I think what she says to him is very true, and it's very appropriate, because I think we all have that same thought in our minds. If this is my last birthday, if this is my last day on Earth, I'm gonna do what I damn well please with who I damn well please to do it with. And to actually quote her, I would do whatever I want with whoever I'd want to do it with. Get the quote right, Orange. But it's a very heartfelt scene. It's a very touching scene. But unfortunately, we see Stark take that sentiment to in a direction that I don't think any rational person would. But granted, he's not thinking rationally. He's dying. He's drunk because he goes on a full bender because he just slurps down that dirty martini that she serves him. And I'll say this much: she makes a good martini. I'm not a big martini drinker, but whatever that one was, I'd try it. But then we get the party scene where you've got the music, you got drinking, he's got his friends, you got the beach bunnies, or whatever you want to call it, and he is acting like a complete and total ass. But at the same time, while they don't understand why he's acting like this, they're just saying, well, it's just the same old Tony we've always known. But we, as the audience, know that's not entirely true. This is a Tony we've never seen before. Now, Rhodey is he's like, all right, that is enough. And he gets the suit, he clears the place out, and he's like, all right, Tony, either you take it off and you stand down, or I'm going to have to put you down. And this is as real as a conversation between two friends as you would see, particularly one friend who's being rational and one friend who's being entirely irrational. And it's a great fight scene. It's got a lot of humor, of course. And something we haven't really commented on, the music cues in this movie, particularly with this one, another one bites the dust by Queen. You've got another music cue at the very beginning of the movie with Shoot to Throw by AC/DC. You've got another one by AC/DC. I can't remember the name of the song, where he gets back to the lab and he fires Jarvis up for the first time in the movie. But another one bites the dust was perfect for this fight here. And of course, Rhodey ends up clobbering him, leaving him on his ass, and he flies off with the suit. Those are my. I will say one thing that you probably missed, Orange. Or maybe I'll leave that point because Jake will probably bring it up. So Jake, you have the floor, buddy.
Well, for me, one of the things we talked about the deleted scene with Natasha uses the gauntlet. I actually, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I actually glad they cut it. I think that it didn't. I think it would have disrupted the flow of the scene. Going from Stark asking her about it and about if this was your last birthday, and then going into the party. I think that if it had come in, because it's obviously when they're out, so you can see it's during the party, just before Pepper comes to talk to Tony to get him to calm down. You can. I think that if it had been inserted there, I do think it would have interrupted the flow. I actually think, like you were saying, Ambassador, I agree with you. Just let Jon Favreau be Jon Favreau. Stop. Everyone wants to nanny him. Just let him be a director. He's really good at it. And I think that decision to cut that, as cool as it would have been, I do think that it would have interrupted that party scene's flow a little bit. Yes. And to the scene where it comes for Rhodey, I think one of the things, and I guess we'll probably talk about this later during the first Nick Fury scene, but one of the things I thought about when I watched this later is if he had just given the suit to Rhodey early on, Rhodey may not have accepted it the same way. And in this scene, he just kind of takes it. He's just so fed up, right? He's so fed up with Stark in this scene. So I think that was his way of handing it off to Rhodey, because he thought that would be the only way Rhodey would take control of it. And then, which again, I'm sorry if I'm getting a little ahead, but when Hammer shows up to pimp out the suit, right? What is the first thing Rhodey does is he pulls out that arc reactor because he doesn't want Hammer to get his hands on it. So I think that that is what that represents, and we see the self-destruction that Tony is going down. And I will say, for me, I do kind of get angry with Pepper and Rhodey that yes, Tony Stark is very eccentric. He's very chaotic at times, but the path of self-destruction he is on in these scenes, don't make sense. If you are just his friend. And you get frustrated with them because they're like, what's wrong? And Rhodey kind of tries to do that, but again, it's more about, earlier when he was in the car and Rhodey swats out the palladium. He says, someone had this technology. You said this technology was 20 years away. Someone had it yesterday. And, it's more about that than, the condition Tony is in. And so I will say, just as me observing this being a third party vendor, I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Why aren't y'all asking him what's wrong? But I get it. I've had friends who have been on self-destructive paths, and I didn't know what that was right away. I didn't you don't recognize it at first because you want to think the best of your friend, right? So
yes,
to also throw them a bone. But yeah, that was kind of my whole take on that sequence. I thought very well done. Very well sequenced by Jon Favreau, and just echoing what Ambassador said, he's really good at keeping things tight, and you can definitely see that in this sequence.
Also, one of the things I noticed that during the fight, when Pepper confronts Widow, when they crash through, Widow takes a fighting stance, which kind of betrays who she really is. If you guys noticed that as well. Question from the chat here. Quick question: opinions on the changes of Justin Hammer from older Englishman to American Man, same as Tony movie, or same age as Tony move. Um, honestly, I have no real opinion on that. I thought that Sam Rockwell played the character very well.
Well, like I said, I think the younger version is from the Ultimates. I could be incorrect
Yeah.
about that, but I think in because I think I mentioned that earlier in the stream that in the Ultimates, Hammer and Obadiah are the same age as Tony, but in the comic books they're older. They're the same age as Tony's father, I believe. So,
Yeah.
but I do believe the younger version is from the Ultimate comics. They were kind of the MCU in the early days were kind of combining sort of 80s storylines with the Ultimates. The Ultimates were really hot at the time, which I don't know why the Ultimates was not that great. Later on, the early stuff was fine, but later on, it just got so out of control. They needed an editor to help with those stuff, or a storyline editor. But so I think just to answer that question, I think that's why they did the younger version, was they were doing the Ultimate Justin Hammer.
Well, and the other thing is, it would be much more realistic to have a younger, or at least a antagonist on the same age level as Tony, rather than an elderly one, because who are you going to get to play a believable Justin Hammer and everything for this movie? Sam Rockwell works perfectly for this role and everything in this movie, and for this particular iteration of the character. I'm not super familiar with the Ultimates or anything. I read like the first few volumes of it, like volumes 1 and 2 of like Ultimate Avengers, Ultimate X-Men, and so on. But after a while, I lost track. I just didn't have the time to keep up with it and everything. But honestly, it didn't bother me or anything. Them changing the age of the character. For me, it's a minor thing, if anything.
Well,
So.
here's the thing. I got a reminder to everybody who doesn't know this. Kevin Feige said early on in the MCU that these movies are not going to be 100% faithful to the comics, because this is its own universe. This is part of the multiverse, which is Earth 199,999. It isn't Earth 616 like they're trying to do with the MCU current. And so, yeah, people need to actually remember that back when these movies were going or starting, that it was a different Earth altogether. So now Rhodey steals the suit and takes it to, I believe, Edwards Air Force Base. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it is. It's Edwards.
And then we have Fury showing up during the donut shop scene, where Tony's just buys a box of donuts and starts eating it in the donut. And I love the line, "Sir, I'm going to need to ask you to exit the donut." And he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't tell if you're real right now." "I'm very real. I'm the most real person you're ever going to meet." Now, we also get a line here. He's like, "Contrary to popular belief, you are not the center of my universe. I have problems in the Southwest region that we're dealing with right now." Now, what people don't realize is when he says Southwest region, he's talking about New Mexico. Now, he's not talking about the town getting destroyed. What he's actually talking about is that there have been atmospheric disturbances, which are garnering S.H.I.E.L.D's attention, because at that point, only Thor and his hammer have entered Earth's atmosphere, which is an interesting little tidbit. So then we realize that Widow has been a S.H.I.E.L.D. shadow, because they learned that, or as soon as they learned that Stark was sick, she was assigned to monitor him to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. And that didn't work so well. But I also like how Fury is extremely funny. He's like, "Little brother walked in there, kicked your ass, and just took it. Is that possible?" And it just really is a great sign. And while he's pissing off Stark, he's like, hit him. And so she injects him in the neck with lithium dioxide to take away the palladium scarring or the palladium poisoning a little bit to abate the symptoms. And he's like, give me a couple of boxes with that. I'll be right as rain. It's not a cure, but it will help abate the symptoms. And we're trying to get him back to work. And he's like, well, trust me, I know I'm good with this stuff. I've looked at every permutation of every known element. And this is where we get the revelation that he hasn't tried it all. Well, before we get to the second half of that, we then get to the not my bird and drone better scene. But before we get to that, what do you think of the donut shop scene, boys and girls? We'll start with the ambassador first because he's the girls.
I'm gonna get you later. You realize this. I'm gonna nail your ass to the wall later. You realize this. It's a very comedic scene. It's also a very good exposition scene because you do need some exposition here because this is the part where Fury lays out. He's like, your dad was on the track to this, but he couldn't finish it because, well, he died, unfortunately. Him and his mom both. And that's a story for another time, which we'll get to it another time. But you can't think of a more funnier line. Excuse me, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the donut. If that was Homer Simpson, Fury would be a dead man. But we have the reveal, the formal reveal that Natalie is in fact Natasha, Agent Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, who we have all come to know and love, and whose movie should have been way before when it was released, and I still haven't watched. But that's beside the point. And of course, you transition over to Hammer and Ivan, and now he's like, that's not my bird. That's not my bird, and I'm going to build you drones rather than an army of suits. And to be honest, in a way, Ivan's right. Drones are better. You're not risking anybody's life. But we know exactly what Ivan's planning on doing. He's like, oh, you want to go to Stark Expo and put on a big show. He's like, well, I'm going to blow up the show. Except he doesn't say it, obviously. But I do like the interplay between, I won't lie, as this movie went on, the interplay between Hammer and Ivan, it was funny, but it was also unsettling. Because here's a guy who's an arms manufacturer. And he's not what you would suspect at all. As an arms manufacturer, he's too goofy. He's too silly. He's too out there to be taken seriously. Whereas Stark, at least in Iron Man 1, you're like, okay, yeah. He's got real showmanship. He's got real presence on the exhibition stage. We'll get to Hammer's performance on the exhibition stage when we get to it. But Stark as an arms dealer, yeah, I believe. Justin Hammer's an arms dealer? Really? No. And even Man with Bastard agrees with me. Say hi, honey.
Hi, honey.
Anyway, that's my thoughts. Jacob, it's your floor, buddy.
I remember when I first saw the scene in theaters. I loved it. I thought it was great. I will say I wish Black Widow had a more grandiose reveal than it was, but she was always one of my favorite Avengers growing up. Like I said, I always found it insulting when everyone's like, "Oh, when the MCU started out, they were using 2-tier characters," and I'm like, Iron Man, Hulk, and we're founding Avengers. What are you talking about? But that's neither here nor there. So I would have wished that the big reveal that she was Natasha all along would have been a little bit bigger. But I do like the dialogue between Stark and Nick Fury, where, like you said, we get a little exposition. But I like it because it's not an exposition dump. It's more like
Yes.
a backstory. They don't bog it down with flashbacks. They just kind of go bam, 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 and there it is. It's very well written. That's one thing that drives me crazy about some of the newer Marvel stuff and Rings of Power and stuff like that. Like, they have a ton of exposition dumps, and it's show don't tell. But Iron Man 2 is a good example, of how properly to do exposition, where it's entertaining, it's funny. They kept the humor, but it wasn't, that weird, quirky humor that they started doing later. It was very good back and forth. I remember my father. He was this, that, and the other. His happiest day was when he sent me to boarding school, and that's not true. And all this. And from that conversation, very well written, very well acted, we learn about the past. And I think that again, it's a testament to how well written this movie is, and whatnot. And I really thought it was a really good buildup. But of course, you've both talked about the donut scene. I can't really add much, but definitely laughed out loud in the theater when that scene popped up. It's one of the best scenes in the film.
Alrighty. Also, the drone bitter scene when he tries to tell him don't get too attached to things, and then he just swings it right back on Hammer.
Yes.
It's like, don't get so attached to things. But another thing that I really do notice is that when he's telling him drone better, he's not directly looking at Ivan because he is scheming. This is part of his plan. Because he's like, people make problem. Trust me, drone better. Because he's planning on weaponizing the drones for himself. Now, Fury then reveals about the secret of the arc reactor, how it's unfinished technology. We also have Coulson on security, and I absolutely love how Coulson tells him, he's like, if you give any funny business, I will tase you and leave you drooling on the carpet while I watch Super Nanny. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? Seriously? But also, you guys covered what the conversation about Howard Stark, and how Howard Stark, we learn, was a founding member of S.H.I.E.L.D. And his effects are left at Tony's feet. So then we see Hammer weaponizing the War Machine with the ex-wife and his stupidity with the weapons, with the Belgian FN 2000, which is a real weapon.
I love that gun.
Yeah,
I love that gun.
It's used a lot.
That's a pretty
It's used a
gun.
lot in shoot 'em up games.
It was actually used in, I think a variant of it was used in Stargate SG-1. Pretty sure.
I think PUBG has a variant of it as well. The
It's
video game.
It's used in so many different video game platforms. My favorite use of it is Into the Wildlands Ghost Recon. But we then see he's like, with the ex-wife, it will bust the bunker under the bunker you just busted. If it was a book, it makes Ulysses look like it was written in crayon. It would read it to you, and it's like, oh my god, dude, you are overselling this to a degree where I'm willing to bet this thing's just gonna. These were my thoughts when I first saw this movie.
Mm-hmm.
This thing is gonna dud.
Oh yeah.
If it's used.
When you build up something that much, Stark didn't build up the Jerichos that much. He's like, yeah,
for
he
your
gave some build
consideration,
up.
here you go.
I mean, he did give a bit of build up, but not as much as Hammer. Hammer has no showmanship. He has no panache. He has no style. He's outdated. He's analog. He's monochromatic, for heaven's sake. He dresses all
So
in white.
yeah. So we then see that the War Machine, which was title mentioned in the second movie or in the fight between the two, you want to be the War Machine and whatnot, and so then we understand that the thing's going to be outfitted with hammer tech and whatnot. I know I say whatnot a lot. So Tony is then going through Howard's effects, the reels of the Expo outtakes,
I
and
love both.
this scene here, folks, is the scene I wanted to really talk about because this scene actually does get me emotional when I'm watching it, where Tony or his Howard tells him, "I'm limited," or that I built this for you. You're too young to understand this right now, so I thought I'd put this on film. This is the key to the future, and I'm limited by the technology of my time. And if or when you figure this out, you will not only change or you will change the world. My greatest creation is and always will be you. Basically telling him that he actually did love his son. He just didn't know how to fully express it directly to him. And I love also, if you look in the notes, you're looking at the Tesseract or a housing for the Tesseract, which was pretty cool as well. So, what were your guys' thoughts on the reveal of the arc reactor and the Tesseract, and the message from Howard to Tony? We'll start with Jacob this time.
I think it was a very touching moment. Like I said previously, Howard Stark is always, portrayed as a very savvy businessman, very shrewd, very focused on his craft, and I think there's something to be said that um, it shows the legacy. And like you said, he didn't really know how to express uh, to Tony that he loved him. And I think that there's kind of a callback to it in Endgame, because Stark would later say, he did the best he could, and with I think he says that in Captain America: Civil War, and I think this is the moment when Stark realizes that, he, or like you said earlier with the scene with Fury, he says, "My father was cold; he was calculating." Um, and here we have this moment where Tony gets to see his father as a human being who had faults. He wasn't this far off person that I thought he was, and so I think that it's a really great moment. I think seeing the development of the arc reactor come together, that really was geeking me out in the theater, and I know we'll talk more about what that develops into, but just how that scene brought into focus everything about Tony's past and why Tony is such a futurist. He gets it from his old man. His father is a futurist. So that's kind of my take on the scene. It really humanizes Howard. And of course, he gets more humanized in the first Avenger. But for us seeing this the first time, we get, oh, he wasn't just, not necessarily a deadbeat dad, but he wasn't an absent father. He was just didn't know, he just didn't know how to express love because he was always in a lab. So everything was a calculation to him.
For me, this scene is I love this scene. And Orange knows this, Jacob, you don't. My father sadly passed when I was 7 years old. A lot of people who've heard, who follow me on the internet, follow me on my channel, I've discussed this subject numerous times. And the scene, at times, I will never be resentful of my dad. Can't be. I love him too much, even though he's been gone since 1984. I wish he could have done for me what Howard did for Tony. And it does ultimately humanize Howard Stark in a way that we had never really seen him ever. And humanize him for Tony. And the one thing I love is that we do see that Tony does get his sense of humor from his father, because there's an outtake where Howard says, "And I'd like to show you my ass." I love that. I love that line. I love that take. I do. But then it cuts to Tony, and Tony's ears perk up, and he gives, John Slattery, I think I know that's the last name. I can't remember.
John Slattery.
John Slattery as Howard Stark. Every time he had played that part, he nailed it. Every time. And he imparts wisdom, he imparts encouragement, and he also imparts, as you both brought up, love. And here's the thing that I think is lost to younger generations, and maybe even to our generation to a degree. Men from Howard's generation didn't know how to express that type of fatherly love to their children, especially to their sons. To dive into my family just a little. My grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was a very loving, caring man. He went through and survived both the Great Depression, and he served in World War II. He loved my grandmother. If he had been able to stay alive long enough, I'm sure he would have shown me all sorts of love and affection. He loved his son. He loved his daughter, my mom, my uncle. But both of them understood that he was never shown love in his own home because of how his father was. So it's understandable for Howard to not to be able to express that, not just because he is a scientist, because obviously, yes, he is, but you have to look at it from a generational perspective as well. Howard didn't know how to show love in the way that he probably wanted to Tony, and maybe even to his wife Maria. But deep down, he did. And he was able to express it privately. And this was his way of expressing that love to Tony. And that for me is one of the best scenes in this whole movie.
Alrighty.
Ambassador, that was really heartfelt. Thank you for sharing. That was,
Indeed.
I really appreciated that.
No problem.
One thing too, we all forgot to mention, there's a DC reference in Howard Stark's in the bloopers.
World of Tomorrow.
Yep, City of Tomorrow, which is reference Metropolis.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, totally.
It's a good throwaway line because it was a corrected line afterward.
Well, and even with Walt Disney, look at how they shot that intro. It very much is reminiscent of the old intros and so on that Walt Disney would shoot, some of the seminars or whatever that he would put out and everything for the employees and everything that worked at the studio, when it was just Walt Disney Studios, nothing else. And I think that's a great callback as well.
Yep.
Because, well, at the time, it wasn't being funded by Disney, it was being funded by Paramount, but eventually that would change. We didn't know it, but they unintentionally did a callback to Walt Disney.
All right.
So
anyway. Driving to Pepper and getting strawberries, only to learn that she's allergic to them. I thought that was a decent scene, but we're going to gloss over that small bit to the model, because he notices the model And he notices
Yes.
it right immediately when he's looking at the model, because he does the little thing with his hand in the eye, and
Mhm.
he brings it back to his or
Lab.
brings it back to the lab and has a vacuum formed render for it. And then he's like, been dead 20 years, still taking me to church, or still taking me to school.
Take me to school.
And I really do like how after he sent, or his last words to it is, "Thanks, Dad." And then he starts, or he freaking builds a freaking particle accelerator in his damn house, and we get the Captain America shield, or an
Yep.
update, or a prototype, the beginning of a prototype for his new shield.
Yep.
And this is where you learn that he doesn't really care for Captain America. He takes that shield and uses it to make the freaking particle accelerator level. And Coulson has to go to New Mexico to land of enchantment, as he's told, which is pretty funny when you think about it because, well, Thor being magical and whatnot. But we also see on the box Project Pegasus, which is the part of an energy race. So yeah, which is also later, or which was also mentioned in the first movie, I believe, and which is also shown in the Avengers film where they were working on the Tesseract. So he creates the new element and he destroys part of his house doing it because of the laser and whatnot, the prismatic laser, which is pretty cool. It's like, oh my god. So what did you all think of the model, decoding it, and the creation of the new element, and also the Coulson and the shield and whatnot, the whole spiel? Because we got to get, yeah. We'll start with Jake.
Oh, well, I am a big Coulson sucker. I think he's a great character, and I love the scene when he comes in and he said, "I was told you left the premise," and he says, "That was, what does he say? That was 2 weeks ago. Where have you been?"
That was like 3 years ago.
Oh, 3 years ago is what. Yeah, that was like 3 years ago. Where have you been? And do you need something? It was. I love that whole interaction. And one thing that's cool is Coulson came from a sitcom. This Iron Man was one of his first big time, Hollywood movies. Obviously, it wasn't a starring role yet. He just has appearances in both these films. But it's really cool to see see an actor go from, he was in the New Adventures of Old Christine, and then now he is in the MCU. And I think that whole conversation is really great. I will say I did think the decoding was a little fast. I was kind of like, even watching it recently, I was kind of like, whoa, this scene is really fever pitch level. That's not to say it's not cool. I think it's neat that he decoded it and he built the particle accelerator and everything, but it is like bam, 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 boom. There's a new particle, or a new element. And it's very so I will say that's one thing about it, is I did feel like it was I don't want to say it was rushed, but it was incredibly fast paced. So, but I did think it was cool. I will admit, because of the shape of it, I thought it was vibranium he had created, but then later it didn't make sense with how they were talking about vibranium in later movies. But just in the theater, just me being a dumb college kid, I was like, oh my gosh, you created vibranium. But yeah, I think that was a really great. It was a really great scene when he, it puts it in, and you watch the Etch a Sketch, the high tech Etch a Sketch fade away. That was a really impressive, well done scene.
Yeah. One of the things I will contend on you there, when a genius has an idea of what he's looking for, he will put it together rapid, quick.
That's a fair
And
point.
his father did give him a clue as to what that thing was. So he decoding it, it's like, okay, this is, or I have an idea, but oh my, wait a minute, this is what I'm possibly looking for.
That's a good point for sure.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I just felt like it's kind of like whoa, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean when they're struck with a stroke of genius, it goes pretty quickly.
That's a fair
Well-
point. I wish it was like that with my novel writing.
Same here.
Well, yeah. Well, and here's the other thing too, Jack. Consider this: it took nothing more than him being dunked in a bucket of water for him to get the image of the arc reactor in his head, that circle of light. Now, granted, it took him a little bit longer because he didn't have access to a lot of high-tech technology to build that first arc reactor.
That's true.
But excuse me.
Well, keep sucking on those cigarettes. No, just kidding.
Shut up. But him vacuforming that model down to the atom, and then thank you, dear. Building the particle accelerator in his basement. How many people did you know that could actually assemble a particle accelerator in their basement, not to mention have the access to the materials to do it? Obviously, Tony Stark could, because he had access to all those materials. And a little bit of an old joke. Instead of a square peg into a round hole, he took a atom. He took a spherical element and put it into a triangular hole.
That is pretty cool.
And it's Tony's genius at work, and that's what we always love to see, is Tony's genius at work. And man, and obviously it leads into the big the lead up to the big conflict and everything at the end, because the next
Yep.
scene is
Is Vanko working on his own
Vanko.
thing?
Yep.
Presentation, not demonstration. He double crosses Hammer essentially, and Hammer basically gives him the threat. And I love how he calls Tony all bloodied up a little bit because he has a bloody nose and a bloody hand, and he hung the guards. And then Tony realizes, I'll do it to you in 40 minutes what you did to my family in 40 years. So then he also sees that Hammer's about to give a demonstration. Tri-state area is where the call came from. 40 minutes is Hammer's presentation time in 40 minutes. So, oh shit. So he has to do he puts in the chess piece and basically has an orgasm doing it.
Tastes like coconut
and metal. Oh,
Metal.
yeah!
Yeah. He's like,
So,
I feel better now.
yep. And then we get to Hammer's demonstration, which is cringe as fuck. Now,
Cringe?
does anybody notice that when Hammer
Zuckerberg.
brings out the Hammer drones, it's in the same order as In the Army Now, from the movie In the Army Now, when Bones goes over the branches? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. And it's like, oh my god, dude, just stop. He freaking does a dry hump in the air, or air hump, with the freaking Marines. It's like, no, don't do that. And then we see the reveal for War Machine, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we also then see the gold, silver, and red Mark 6 suit with the triangular arc. And as soon as he shows up, what does Vanko do? He unleashes his plan. And by doing so, completely ruins Hammer. I mean, it's like, dude, you fucked over him. He's gonna fuck you over right back.
Just do it better.
Yep. So, what did you guys think of that scene?
Jake,
And
would
we'll
you like
start
to go
with.
first?
Yep.
You want me to go
Oh,
first?
okay. Sure. Loved it. It's I love when, like you said, Hammer comes out and he does that kind of dorky jig, and then he's like, "Get that out of here," talking about the stand and everything. And like you said, it's
That's tough.
cringe. It's exactly. I even said while you were talking about it, I was like, "Man, it's like watching Zuckerberg talk." It's like, you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I've had enough of this already." It's like, yes, you invented Facebook. Good for you. You stole the idea from two twin brothers. It's that's exactly what you think when you see him. He's a fraud who stole his ideas from Stark, and watching all the drones pop up, and of course they can't. Of course, he thinks they can't do anything, right? That was the whole thing. He goes, "I will make them salute," and it's such a great scene. I love when Stark, because it's dead quiet, right? Other than Hammer's hype music, Stark lands, thunderous applause, right? And
Yeah.
it's such a great. It just shows you how much, even though Stark's, he's been injured, his behavior's been incredibly erratic. He just has that staying power that Hammer can't ever get a hold of. So I love that scene. And then when Hammer has that realization that he's been betrayed, and the drones go crazy, and as well as Rhodey's suit. It's just so well acted. And again, earlier, Ambassador, you were talking about how Don Cheadle is perfect for the role of Rhodey. I thought he did that scene very well when he realized something was wrong. That was a very well acted scene. So freaking loved it. Thought it was great. The moment when Hammer just goes, "Oh my gosh," and he realizes something's wrong. I think he flees off the stage, right? He just takes off. So pretty cool. I thought it was a really great scene and a perfect opener for the climax of the film.
That's what she said. And again, Justin Hammer has no staying power. That's what she said.
Yeah.
But as far as the opener for the finale for the big kaboom, it's Justin Hammer is the personification of cringe cheesiness, and it's not the good type of cheesiness like Cheetos cheese puffs, which are yummy and delicious. It's just bland, stale, and old, and not funny, not creative, not original. Justin Hammer, if he had a original idea in his head, I think his brain would explode and come oozing out of his ears. That whole presentation lacks so little finesse and so little class. I mean, it makes me want to just. I weep for every person at the expo, and they're like, seriously? We came to the Shark Expo, we're getting an amusement park, third-rate musical act with robots? Really? That's the best Justin Hammer can do. And it's all concocted by a guy who hates his guts and is going to completely screw him over.
Yep.
Now, the thing I will say, they were completely faithful to the color scheme and the overall design of the Mark I War Machine suit, because I remember that suit and I'm like, why doesn't Tony Stark have a suit with just a lot of guns and missiles and stuff? And they're like, hi, hello. I'm like, when they showed that in the trailer, I was like, that's the War Machine. I remember that from when I read comics. Oh, hell yes. Give me a live action War Machine. And there was indeed much rejoicing. And it's It was perfect open. And then we get all the shenanigans by Ivan. We get a bungling by Hammer, and we get Stark and Rhodey taking the drones to school. So let's get into it.
So one of the things I do like about that scene, but I do want to address the chat first because we got some questions from the chat. Neozoic asks opinions on deleted scene of Ivan Vanko kidnap Potts in the expo to kill Tony, which takes place after the battle against the drones, and Ivan is killed by Rhodes. I've never seen that.
I haven't seen those either.
I haven't seen that
Ditto.
all.
Ditto.
So
At all.
there's an alternate ending. Interesting.
Apparently.
I didn't know that.
But as for, I do like how Tony, he's like, Jarvis break in, I need to own him, and it doesn't work because even though it's the Mark II platform still for the War Machine, it was upgraded with Hammer's software, but upgraded software thanks to Ivan Vanko.
Upgraded.
And we also get the Peter Parker Iron Man or Iron Boy scene. And I like how Iron Man, he's like, nice shot, kid, and then flies off. Basically giving that kid his dream come true. You know? The kid wanted to be a hero, he got to be the hero. And then you also see that Hammer gets arrested because they find out that he is responsible for this thanks to Widow threatening to break his arm. And also we get the Widow with the bra and Happy driving her, and it's like, watch the road. Yep, I got it. Now, the guy that Happy fights at Hammer Industries has also been in another movie with Jon Favreau, and that movie was Daredevil.
That's right. I thought that guy looked familiar.
It's The Rock's cousin as well. It's Dwayne Johnson's cousin.
I thought that guy looked familiar.
Yep, he was the guy that spotted Daredevil in the bar.
Yeah. After Murdoch loses the case.
Yep.
With
so
the one guy
what's
that
up
gets.
With that?
I haven't seen Daredevil in forever.
Yeah, and that's the same guy.
Yeah.
And yes, it was meant to be an alternate ending, according to Neozoic.
Oh,
okay.
So, yep, he gets to box that dude while Widow is showing off her skills, which, honestly, I thought were pretty damn good. Now, I know for a fact it was not, and I know for a fact that it was not Scarlett Johansson doing all that. Although she did have training for the most part to do some of it. But I thought that they did a good way of cutting around to make her look good.
I say this as a happily married man. There is no angle where she doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm. And then we see Vanko's watching this, and he boots up his own suit, which is very reminiscent to the Crimson Dynamo suit, if you ask me.
Yes, it is. Deliberately so, yes.
Yep. And eventually we see them reboot, or she gets into there, reboots Rhodey's suit, and we get the battle in the House of Blue Leaves, or whatever it was called. Now, if you notice the shot where Rhodey just blasts into one of the drones and gets a bunch of oil all over his face, that was, according to Jon Favreau, intentional because he wanted it to be like bloody, to really look bloody.
Oh yeah, I love that.
That's cool.
So the oil was blood in this case. And I also do like how Rhodey's minigun does targeting without looking, which is pretty good as well. Because he's shooting at things behind him as well as in front of him. So then we get to the fight with Vanko, and I'm going to bust his bunker with the ex-wife. What the what? And it's a fucking dud. And I'm like, he's like, hammer tech? Yeah.
Orange, you might get this reference, you might not. Big entrance, little show.
Yeah. I I think I heard that like once a long while back.
Season 4, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Fear Itself.
Oh, yep. Yep.
When she's at the Halloween party at the frat house.
Yep. I remember now.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah.
But
That's a deep cut.
so then we get they beat him with the same thing that they did when they were fighting themselves, and we learn that the drones are all slaved for self-destruct. What do you guys all think of the House of Blue Leaves fight against the 20 drones, and then against Vanko? Good to be back. We'll start with Jacob.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut in, but I just wanted to make a correction. And Ambassador wants. Earlier, I kept saying Red Cyclone. I meant Crimson Dynamo. I'm sure y'all knew that and polite enough not to correct me, but I realized when you said it, I made that mistake. I don't know.
Honestly, I thought Red Cyclone was a Marvel character.
There's a character called Cyclone, but he's not Red Cyclone. He's actually an X-Men villain, and for some reason, I was getting them swapped in my head. So I just wanted to make that correction. So, Ambassador, I'll let you do your comments, but I just wanted to correct myself there.
The whole shootout between when Rhodey's just like, Tony on your 6, Tony at 2:00, Tony at 6:00. And he's like, incoming fire, I've got weapons lock on you. And you feel bad for Rhodey because he does actually want to shoot at Tony. He wanted to beat him up earlier, but he's like, I can't do much, but at least I can give you a heads up so you can dodge. But that scene at Hammer Industries with Natasha, that gives us our first inkling to just how dangerous this woman is. That's why she's called Black Widow. She's beautiful, but she'll kill you. But I remember because me and my mother Ambassador, we went and saw this in theaters because we finally got to watch the first one. She's like, and this is back when she was still keeping up with the MCU a little bit and everything. And I was like, hey, Mom, there's Iron Man 2. She's like, oh, okay, let's go see it. And we got to see that scene. We came out, me and my mom, we talked movies, but we didn't talk them the in-depth way that I do. But I was like, she kicked some ass. And she's like, yeah, she did. But I was like, that whole finale, where you got Tony and Rhodey fighting side by side, and then he uses the one-off laser, which later on becomes not so much of a one-off.
Yep.
And it's a great sequence. I'm gonna say you got the fight between Rhodey and Tony and Ivan, and yeah, it's a dud. It's Hammer Tech. Of course, it's gonna be a dud. It's a piece of crap invented by a schlocky idiot. The man has no taste. He has no style. He dresses all in white. All his stuff is white. His factory is white. His drones were white. The only person who had any type of style was Ivan. And for heaven's sakes, he grew up in former Soviet Russia. He had more style and more taste, at least to a degree, than Justin Hammer did. And yeah, he got his ass handed to him by Pepper Potts and Black Widow. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Take his ass off to jail. Let him have to perform an unspeakable act on a few inmates. And of course, they blow up Ivan, and Tony and Pepper are on the roof, and Rhodey's just staying there, and Pepper's like, wait a minute, you were dying? Because Natasha lets it slip. She's like, your new chest piece looks like it's working very well, and it's completely eliminate all the palladium poisoning that you were dealing with. And Pepper was like, what? You were dying? You were actually dying? I thought you were just being an ass. Or something to that effect. And then they're on the and he's like, can we just kiss? I just saved your life. I just saved everybody's life. Can't we just kiss and have that moment?
You look like two seals arguing over a grape. That was the best line of that entire thing. Also, when she pushes him when they get on the rooftop and his mouth opens, I thought that was like a really bad special effect or something like that until I realized it was a glitch of the suit because his suit was damaged up a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh my god! And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with that helmet? So we then get to our shield debrief and the Avengers Initiative
Yep.
and how Tony is going over Widow's psych profile of him. He's like, acute narcissism. Agreed. And then
No, textbook
textbook
narcissism.
narcissism and like, self-destructive. I was dying, but then again,
Bingo.
aren't we all and whatnot? And we also see that there's the news report of the Hulk at Culver University, and that they only want him as a consultant. And we get the senator prick again, and who actually gives him a prick. He's like, it's amazing how annoying a little prick can be. So, and then we get our stinger of Thor's hammer at the end. Let's discuss. What do we all think of those scenes?
Thought it was a fantastic ending to the movie. I thought it tied everything together in a nice wrapped bow. Loved the stinger for Thor. Fun fact: my sister, who was still dating her then husband, he was not a comic books fan, and so but it's a movie, right? So he took her out on a date, and when the stinger for Thor came up, I had seen it before my sister, so she had already got to hear me geeking out about the movie. And so at the stinger, he goes, I don't get it. What's with the hammer? And she goes, it's Thor's hammer. And then she kind of like caught herself and she realized, and she told me later, she's like, you're rubbing off on me. But yeah, it was so funny. She's like, I just fact checked him, and then she's realized, oh my gosh, I'm nerding out like my brother. So I thought that was kind of funny. And now they're happily married and have a kid. So that's really so I guess it worked. But yeah, he is not not until recently. I kind of got him into the movies later on, but he didn't read the comics or anything. He was more into Ninja Turtles and video games and music and whatnot. So it was kind of funny that how that transpired. But yeah, I thought the movie, it wrapped up really well, and it was a perfect lead into Thor.
Yep. All right, Ambassador.
The debrief between Stark and Fury, he's like, I'm approved and I'm not approved. But then Stark says, after he's like, we want to keep you on as a consultant, he's like, you can't afford me. But of course, at this point, he's back to being CEO of Stark Industries, and they really can't afford him because why be a consultant when you're a CEO already? But of course, they do have him as a consultant, obviously, in the first Avengers movie, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks here.
Yep.
But it was a really cool scene. I mean, Stark acknowledges he has his faults. He's like, hey, yeah. But he's like, at the same time, hey, I was going through some stuff that you probably couldn't handle yourself, Fury. And, of course, you have the stinger with Coulson in the desert, and then we see Mjolnir, or as Darcy calls it, Mjolnir. And I'll be able to say that throughout the review next week. Hey, it's Mjolnir.
I don't know if y'all talked about this in The Incredible Hulk, but this is actually where we get our second short film in between Iron Man and Thor, when Coulson stops a gas station robbery. I think it's called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer.
Yep.
And
No,
there was one
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's actually it's really funny actually, and then there's one for Incredible Hulk as well.
Yeah, the consultant.
Don't they have those on Disney Plus? I think.
I think
the
so. Yeah.
one-offs, yeah, the one
Yeah.
or the one shots or whatever they call them.
Yeah, the one shots. I'm gonna have to go check those out now because I didn't even know they had done those. Okay.
You know?
The Carter one, Agent Carter one, is the best.
Yeah, I really do
I'll-
like
I'll-
Agent Carter's
I'll
because that
I'll have to
actually
check that.
set it up for Agent Carter, the show.
I'll definitely have to check that out. So, but yeah,
But
that's those are pretty much my thoughts. I mean, the movie. I don't get why people say it was jam packed with too much stuff and too many lead-ins for future stuff. It was balanced out just right, at least as far as I'm concerned. It progressed its own story. It tied in other stuff for other things that still linked to the main plot line. So I don't see why there was all this criticism. Granted, there's more criticism for Iron Man 3, but again, I don't see that either because it's. But we'll get to Iron Man 3 when we get to Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
I'm going off on a big tangent, and I don't want to, so I'm just going to shut up and say I love Iron Man 2.
all right, so how would we
everybody else
all
is-
score it?
I would score it 7 out of 10. Still fantastic, still good, still riding on that MCU Phase 1 high. And I mentioned it had a couple of hiccups for me just as a film, just looking at it from a putting on my reviewer hat. But I still overall think it's a good film. It's overhated and underrated in my opinion. I think that it's really good at continuing the story of Tony Stark and a great setup for what we will see with Howard Stark later on.
Ambassador.
Scoring it, I just give a base score. I don't go into a bunch of other things, but that's your thing. I will give it an 8.5. Actually, you know what? I'll be a little more generous. I will give it a 9 out of 10. Because the only minor issue I had, and that's with the wardrobe thing, is from the scene between between Tony and Natasha when she's in that gray dress, and then she's at the party and she's in that leopard print type dress. I'm like, where the hell did that happen? I mean, I know she can be a quick change artist, but damn. But aside from that, yeah, it's a solid. For me, it's a solid 9. It's a very enjoyable, very well put together movie.
As for me, I do the 3 tiers. Objectively, there are some little bit of problems here and there, continuity, goofs, and such. Also inconsistency, like the dress situation that you mentioned. That puts this movie at about a 7 to a 7.5. Subjectively, I would put this movie at about an 8 out of 10. I really like it. However, I don't think it's the better of the Iron Man movies. Iron Man 1 is the best out of all 3 of them. Moviegoer, this movie keeps me entertained. It is a 10 out of 10 by far. So with that, we're going to let you guys plug your stuff. We'll start with Jacob first.
Check out my website, studiojakemedia.com. I've got tons of reviews. I don't just do comic book movies. I do mainstream movies as well. I just did the Super Mario Brothers as well as Cocaine Bear. Also check out my YouTube channel, which is which is also Studio Jake, just youtube.com/@Studio Jake, and it'll come up. It's my vidcast. I talk about all things pop culture. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm at 699, so more than halfway there. Help me get to the full 1,000 this year. I would really appreciate it.
And Ambassador.
Well, my link is down here below my name, the Ambassadorial Wing. I talk film. 3 categories: ultra retro, and modern. I talk streaming. Again, well, streaming or anything more modern. My next thing will be actually tomorrow night, 7 p.m. over on the Ambassadorial Wing. I'll be talking about season 3 of The Mandalorian, the finale, and the second half of the season, and the season in total. So that'll be at 7 p.m. Central Time. I am working my way towards 600. I'm at 504 and everything on the road to 1,000. Hopefully, I'll get there before I'm dead. So, I've got a lot of things in the works and everything. Got several review series I'm going to be doing over the next few months and everything. So, I'll be releasing that on my community tab on my social media. I'm on Twitter and I am on Instagram. So, head to my Twitter, find the link, and follow me. So, that's my shameless plug.
All right. And you guys know where to find me. I also have my mystery review coming up on Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Stay tuned for next Sunday when we delve into Thor and see what it takes to be worthy to lift the hammer. So, yes, folks, thank you so much to Neozoic, Titan, Jack of All Casuals, Christian Freights, Daniel Martin, Vanya, Elena Na, Society Reviews. Who else?
I think that was everybody.
Myself in the chat. Neozoic. Yep, that is everybody. Thank you so much for stopping in. And also, tomorrow or Tuesday nights, I am on Society Reviews channel for the Barroom Podcast. You can catch me there. And every month, during a couple Wednesdays, I go on to Mara Jade's Jade Shadow channel to do the ones and twos. So with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for joining. And hopefully we'll get the ladies back next week. So for Thor, because we all know that they have crushes on Chris Hemsworth. So yeah. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all have a wonderful night, and always remember to stay humble.
Night,